Yes.
The lead Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1408 of the War News stream. And we have very big news out of the Middle East, especially tonight. We've seen Iran declare martial law in several different provinces as riots are escalating and protesters are becoming armed with Kalashnikovs. We've also seen that Russia is now officially demanding that the U.S. forces end the pursuit of the Venezuelan tanker in the Atlantic. And also, Ukraine's attacked more huge Russian refineries tonight and caused significant damage. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world here on a very new reporting week as far as the channel is concerned, as major news has emerged from the Islamic Republic of Iran showing that the uprising has only grown larger over the course of the past 24 hours. With multiple city centers now being brought under the control of rebel forces, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and the internal security services of the Islamic Republic of Iran appear to be on the back foot. Open firefights are now emerging within the city streets as some of the rebels have now equipped themselves with arms, apparently breaking into Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps headquarters and police headquarters within the cities and arming themselves with weapons and ammunition found inside. The Islamic Republic of Iran has declared martial law in most cities where these ongoing uprisings and rebellions are currently being conducted, and it appears that the Islamic Republic of Iran's government may be under even farther pressure as national demands by the rebels are now being made for a public uprising or rebellion to be conducted within the very city center of the Islamic Republic of Tehran, which is a seat of the Iranian government and is currently where most top Iranian officials are inside the country at this moment. Meanwhile, outside of the Islamic Republic of Iran, we have also heard that the State of Israel is apparently preparing for a three-front war against Hamas, against Hezbollah, and against the Islamic Republic of Iran, meaning that in the midst of the rebels giving a death blow to the Islamic Republic of Iran's government, the Israelis might also be kicking them while they're down. Outside of that, a Reaper or Predator drone of the United States Air Force has actually crash-landed within the mountains of Afghanistan within the Hindu Kush region after some sort of an unknown technical difficulty. The Republic of China in East Asia is currently conducting its continued military exercises around Taipei, New Taipei, Taichung, and Kaohsiung, while at the same time, the United States of America's Department of State has openly declared the People's Republic of China's actions within the East China Sea to be unnecessarily increasing tensions, and that the People's Republic of China should back down from any further provocations against Taiwan, Japan, Korea, the Philippines, Vietnam, or any other surrounding countries that are within the waters surrounding the People's Republic of China. Meanwhile, additional statements have been made on the ongoing pursuit of the Bella 1, as we've apparently been able to hear that the Bella 1's got that hotline bling, and according to the hotline that we heard today, it apparently had a direct phone call with the Russian Federation, as the Russian Federations have lodged an official demand with the United States of America to stop the pursuit of the Bella 1, as the Bella 1 is now flying the Russian flag off of the rear of the vessel and is claiming to be registered out of the Russian Federation, although when the pursuit began, it was flying the flag of the Islamic Republic of Iran. We have heard that the United States is currently deliberating its future actions against the Bella 1, with some officials saying that they may actually back off due to the Russian demand, others saying that the vessel is now stateless, as it was flying a false flag when it was entering the U.S. blockade, and for that reason, this vessel actually does not have a nationality of origin, and for that reason is subject to whatever actions the United States deems necessary. Outside of that, a U.S. B-1 Lancer also took off near Dyes Air Force Base and currently was flying into the Caribbean over the course of the day, but the transponder was turned off right after it flew out of Dyes Air Force Base, and so for that reason, we have not been able to track the flight incredibly well. The state of Ukraine has also continued to inflict significant casualties onto the Russian Federation's armed forces and have been able to stop most advances in most major battlefields throughout the day. Another major Ukrainian drone attack was conducted overnight against the Russian Federation's armed forces and strategic infrastructure, including a significant strike on the Novokupeshevsk oil refinery west of Samara. Video footage did emerge showing impacts and strikes within the area, and official confirmation did come out from the Russian Federation that nearly 10 separate explosions were heard and seen on the Novokupeshevsk oil refinery, which may be significant enough damage that the refinery may have been knocked out for an indefinite period throughout the remainder of the war, or may have been knocked out for an incredibly long period of time, possibly a half year or longer. The Russian Federation's government is also continuing to deal with the ongoing scandal that they completely lied about the ongoing drone attack on Putin's private residence. And the Russian Ministry of Defense is now actually correcting the CIA today over Twitter, telling them that their intelligence apparatus, which is one of the best fleshed out in the world, is actually incorrect, and that data from the Russian Ministry of Defense clearly did show that 90 Ukrainian drones flew straight at Putin's residence, although that many were also seen around the Moscow air defense perimeter. Once again,
I didn't know they had SD cards in like Star Wars X-Wing fighters. That was like an X-Wing fighter above that house. That was no normal drone.
Yeah, it was not a normal drone, and on top of that, it was an AI video to boot. We also heard that apparently the ham and cheddar man is nearly dead. That's what we call Ramzan Kadyrov, who is the leader of the Chechen Semi-Autonomous Republic. Apparently, he's been in hospital since the 24th of December, and it appears that Santa gave him some sort of a disease instead of a lump of coal, because they're apparently saying that he's in such bad state that at some point he had to have been resuscitated and practically brought back to life, meaning that he may be clinging on to dear life at this moment within Moscow. The Russian Federation is also trying to make it appear that the Russian war industry is still operational by carting around a couple of T-90Ms on the back of some rail cars and pretending that they just made them, although they're probably a part of a Russian armored regiment that is based out of the Moscow area or the Moscow Defense District. We've also seen that the Finnish are continuing their investigation on the severed cable within the Gulf of Finland, and the vessel that they seized yesterday, which was alleged to have conducted that action, was actually carrying a sanctioned cargo of steel coils from Russian steel refineries. We have a lot of news to cover over the course of the day, and of course, folks, we've got to make it through all of the major news that we have today, starting with the largest stories first, and then making our way on into the smaller stories throughout the night. I cannot deny, folks, that we have an absolutely major amount of news tonight coming out of the Islamic Republic of Iran, and that's generally where the primary part of our news coverage is going to be tonight, as it appears that the 1979 revolution is once again resurging within the country and apparently attempting to bring it back to its original form before the rise of the Islamic Republic of Iran. And so moving us on into that major news within the Islamic Republic of Iran, The situation has gotten even worse. New Year's Day didn't bring a new leaf that was turned, at least in a good way, for the Islamic Republic of Iran, but it is a good leaf for the Islamic Republic of Iran's citizens nonetheless. The Islamic Republic of Iran's government has officially declared that martial law is now in effect in most city areas where there are ongoing uprisings being conducted. This means that the large majority of the Islamic Republic of Iran currently finds itself under martial law. This is the current map of all incidents of uprisings that have been seen within the Islamic Republic of Iran, and largely every populated area in the country, specifically the western part of the country from Tehran and westwards over, is embroiled in ongoing uprisings that are significantly large, usually ranging in the thousands to tens of thousands, and is incredibly violent and we can only describe as bloodlusted. These people have had it up to their neck with the Iranian government, and it appears that at this point there is quite literally no way or means to stop them. It seems as though some Iranian officials may have found that out the hard way today, without a doubt, as we did hear that apparently within the city of Avaj, the rebels are now armed, and this is a situation that we've seen across the entirety of the Islamic Republic of Iran in several separate locations, where citizens who are currently a part of the rebellion have apparently been breaking into Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps headquarters or police headquarters within their cities, then busting into the armories and gun lockers within the buildings and stealing firearms and ammunition, quite literally arming the rebellion from the ground up. We can actually see a clip here showing some of these citizens armed in the streets, firing off the rifles that they just seized or stole from the Islamic Republic of Iran's internal security forces.
Oh, wow. Now, that's not what you want to do when you procure a firearm and start firing all the ammunition out of it. You'd probably want to conserve that, but, I guess he's trying to prove that it works.
I think he's just trying to send a message, possibly. I don't really know. Still not a smart idea, folks, to fire a crank right up into the air. And I can tell you all this, folks. This appears to be an AKS-74U, which also tells us that this was most likely acquired from the police inside of Iran. The Islamic Republic of Iran's internal security forces usually specialize in the carrying of carbines and smaller forms of rifles that are used, including this AKS-74U, which was what was seen in the video. These are highly likely being seized either from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps headquarters or the local police headquarters, as the police in Iran, when armed with any form of rifle, heavily carry the AKS-74U or other shorter forms of rifles or SMGs, including the MP5. This seems to highly likely suggest to us that they are taking control of entire police headquarters at the moment, and this is also showing us, at least within the area of Avaj, they have taken control of a large enough area of the city that they've pushed practically all law enforcement elements of the Iranian government out of the area, and they may be in control of police precincts and other locations that are critical for government function within that area. Outside of Avaj, we did see that within other surrounding cities, similar incidents were happening. For example, we did see that within the smaller city of Lali, we were able to see that a statue of Qasem Soleimani was actually caught on fire. We can see that right here.
That's the Soleimani that has the curse on him, right? And anybody that was ever seen with Soleimani had an unfortunate demise, a very sudden demise, usually.
Yeah, that is the Soleimani. This is actually the Soleimani that was obliterated by a U.S. drone strike on the road leading into the Baghdad International Airport several years ago. So it seems as though everyone is not really considering the martyrs of Iran to really be that respected, at least at this point. We heard that through some means, some way or another, after this video was made, the locals actually destroyed the statue down to the foundation that it was set on. We don't have any video or picture evidence of that at the moment, but that is generally the claim coming out from the ground, is that after they tried to burn the thing down with a Molotov, which wasn't going to be successful, they apparently then took sledgehammers or some other form of an instrument like that to the statue and literally rendered it to rubble. Meanwhile, in another nearby city outside of the city of Avaj, we also heard reports near to Shahrekord that apparently within the smaller town of Farsan, a group of the rioters or rebels had actually caught an entire seminary school on fire. The reason why the seminary school was caught on fire, if y'all don't know the cultural political implication or significance to this. It's not generally against Islam, but it's more so specifically against the Iranian government. Considering that the Iranian government is a theocracy, meaning that they recognize an official state religion, seminary schools like these are generally not used for religious purposes. They are more so used for propaganda and political gain within the country to largely brainwash people to believe the Islamic Republic of Iran's propaganda and statements throughout the country, and to use it as a form of a tool to get the public into subservience to the Iranian government and make them believe that the Iranian government is ordained by Allah to be able to lead the country. For that reason, these seminary schools do come under a great deal of ire, especially from the public, who finds the Islamic Republic's government to be of great disdain, and we can see that they're actually burning down seminary schools at this point to get back at the government and to also show that they will no longer allow the Islamic Republic of Iran's perversions of the majority religion of the country, or for any religion for that matter, to continue to persist. Outside of that, additional news was heard moving us on and towards the area of the city of Isfahan that apparently there were also some pretty significant actions being taken against security forces in the area. This minibus, which just minutes before this video was made, had actually brought Iranian internal security services into the area, which apparently were then pushed right back out due to heavy resistance from the ongoing rebellion. Then saw that their minibus that they came in on was burned down. So they can't even leave town in the horse they rode in on because the horse got burned down in the middle of the street, in a figurative sense.
Honestly impressive. They have a very large supply of Molotov cocktails, it looks like. They've been apparently stockpiling those because I would doubt that they just made them on the spot, because I know it's simple to make a Molotov. We're not going to explain that process, obviously, but it's simple to make. So I'm guessing they had some in their basements, I would imagine.
I suppose they just are apparently making these on the spot. They're running out of water, folks, but one thing that Iran is not running out of is refined fuels like diesel or gasoline. And it appears that gasoline is in quite wide supply and fairly affordable because they're using that as their number one weapon at this point. On the first 2 days of this uprising, we saw that they were generally using stones. Now by the 5th day, which is today, we're now seeing that they're equipped with some rifles and Molotov cocktails. So they are becoming more armed and more equipped as the days are passing by. Additionally, we also saw another clip within Isfahan of the ongoing protests in another area of the city. This is a fairly similar slogan to others that we've seen in other cities in prior days, which is Persian for "Long live the Shah," or "Praise be to the Shah," something along those lines, generally showing reverence to the former government that the Islamic Republic of Iran overthrew in 1979. It's not really meant to be full-on support for the return of a monarchy, but it's generally to say that they liked what came before the current Islamic Republic of Iran's government came into being. That's generally the sentiment that's being showed, an anti-government statement in the strongest form.
Are they shouting because they want the guy back? They want is it the son of the Shah? Like there's a guy currently that is outside of Iran who's exiled right now that is apparently like the top pick for the Iranians to come back. It's Reza Pahlavi, I believe that's how you say his name, the opposition leader. Is that who they're calling to come back?
I think it's generally something along those lines, or generally just anyone who would be not in the current Iranian government. A lot of people look at Reza Pahlavi, who is this guy right here, who is actually the son of the former Shah, who was deposed in 1979 by the 1979 revolution, as the possible next leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran. And he has positioned himself in foreign circles, especially here in the West, as a possible replacement to Ali Khamenei and also anyone else who's a part of the Islamic Republic of Iran's government currently. A lot of them are wanting to see that there is a possible return of the Shah, but I do want to remind everyone that we don't really know the exact motives at the moment, as there isn't really a lot of press liberties in Iran for people to go around and ask these ongoing rebels, what are you rebelling for exactly? A democracy? A monarchy? What do you really want, and what do you want to achieve by the end of this? We don't know if they want the return of a monarchy, because the Shah of Persia was actually an absolute monarchy, very similar to one you would find in modern-day Saudi Arabia, and we really don't know if that's wildly popular with the Iranian public. it would be incredibly indicative of the region, as we generally see that some form of a singular authoritarian head government is usually what works the best within the region. Democracies are usually quite fragile, a lot like the one in Iraq, so they may be wanting the return of a monarchy, or they may be wanting the return of a democracy, but they're generally making the claim for either of those by saying bring back the Shah, just as a resistance to the current Iranian government.
Yeah, I would say so. It's interesting. I see here on Twitter that apparently this guy here, Reza, is apparently, at least allegedly, pretty involved in what's going on right now. He put out a statement actually earlier today. If you want to, Enforcer, I'll put this under the likes tab, by the way, if you want to go grab this real quick, and we can read this statement off that apparently came from Reza, which is the opposition leader.
Oh yeah, we can read that off, actually. So, folks, here's the statement by Reza Pahlavi. My fellow countrymen, greetings to you and your honor and courage. The Islamic Republic tried to confine you to your homes by closing public places and universities, but you bravely stood in the streets. I'm proud of each and every one of you. There is a need for greater solidarity and to maintain control of the streets. Therefore, I ask you to use every opportunity, gathering, and event in the coming days to expand this movement. My team and I will continue to work towards mobilizing more forces, causing more defections from the regime, and also conveying your voice to the world. Victory is ours or will be ours. That's the statement currently from the Iranian opposition leader Reza Pahlavi, who is the son of the former deposed Shah of Iran, who was deposed in 1979. So it does seem that he is actively involved to some extent.
Yeah, very interesting with that. I wonder if that is the guy that most people want, because it sounds like they're chanting this guy's name, at least from what I'm hearing in these crowds. So this guy here apparently is the favored fella, but I wonder if it's actually going to work out where he ends up getting put in charge, because obviously we're still a long way off from the regime of Iran actually getting ousted, and also how this guy would actually come to power is a whole other question too. So we'd have to see. But also it does appear that there is a guy at least in the running to take over, which appears to be this fella.
Yeah, it does appear that this would generally be the guy, at least from the public statements, that they would want to replace the Islamic Republic of Iran's government and Ali Khamenei. But at the same time, a lot of people are talking at this moment about what is going on with the seizure of the firearms, or more so the possession of the firearms, that we're now seeing some of these rebels have in sporadic places. As a matter of fact, it's not just Davaj that we've seen such a situation in today. I'm actually about to get to other cities around the Islamic Republic of Iran where we've also seen similar situations to where these rebels, literally overnight, have now begun to arm themselves with actual firearms and equipment to be able to fight against the Islamic Republic of Iran's internal security forces. And this is what is apparently the big question of the day. Where are they getting these guns? Are they getting them from the police stations or the IRGC headquarters within these cities? Or are they getting them from somewhere else? And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
All right, so where are the Iranian civilians getting these AK rifles from? Because we saw in that one video earlier, the guy mag dumped, it looked like an AK rifle right in the middle of the street in the air, and nobody's really sure where they're getting these from. There's reports claiming that they're going and breaking into police stations and getting these out of the armory, but that's just the report on the street. They could be coming from anywhere. So where do you think they're coming from? 57% said from Iranian armories and police stations, while 22% said likely from foreign intelligence services, and 13% said likely from basements, etc. Maybe they were storing them for a rainy day and they finally brought them out to play, essentially. So I would say I'm actually with the 57%. It is likely because we've seen a lot of breaking in of buildings happening all over Iran. These riots have turned violent and they're bashing in the windows to places, including the government buildings and the police stations. So naturally, if they're doing that, they would have access to AK rifles that are inside the armories of these places. So it's natural that they would be getting them from there, but I would not rule out, though, the possibility that there's somehow foreign intelligence services may be bringing in weapons to Iran. That's also possible as well, but right now there's no concrete proof of it. But this is a very ripe situation for like groups like the CIA, the Mossad, etc. might want to help spark this along, so that way this accelerates and also collapses the Iranian government faster. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that I would be the large majority, the 56% that are saying that most of the weapons are coming from Iranian armories and police stations, as a lot of the weaponry that we're seeing currently is very, very similar to the sort of weaponry that we do see used by internal security security forces and the IRGC when operating in Iran. For that reason, it would be highly likely to believe that they're getting these from a more local source instead of any intelligence agency or source that's currently operating in the country. However, I do have to say, folks, that if these people gain a footing, we'll probably see more heavy involvement from intelligence agencies in supporting and arming these rebels against the government in the ongoing revolution. Many people do have to remember that these sorts of uprisings generally have to have a bit of a temperature or a heartbeat to be able to get any form of foreign support. As a matter of fact, that's basically how every single conflict in the entirety of the world has ever gone. Some people may not know this, but in the original U.S. Revolutionary War, the United States Continental Army and Continental Navy, which hardly existed, got basically no foreign support until they won the battle, or seized the fort Ticonderoga, and also won a couple of key battles at the earlier part of the conflict, which showed countries like the Kingdom of Spain and the Kingdom of France that there was a possibility that if the American Revolution was armed and supported and funded properly, they actually would have a very high chance of succeeding against the British, which ended up being successful. The Imperial Germans actually discovered that if they tried to fund and support the Irish separatists inside of the First World War, there actually may be a good bit of success on seeing that that would cause a decent amount of dissent at home. That's actually a part of what led to the Easter Uprising of 1916, and also what eventually led to the Irish secession of 1921 from the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. But that was only after they saw in the Easter Uprising that there may be a chance of success if they were to try and attempt and arm and support that group. It's just a little bit ironic, though, that Imperial Germany didn't survive long enough to actually see that come to fruition. It's actually the same in basically every conflict. For example, the Chinese Civil War in 1945, it was seen by the Soviet Union that while Mao's Chinese Communist Party, hiding in the mountains of the Shaanxi province of China, was a fairly small faction, especially compared to the Republic of China, they had shown that in some key battles during the Second World War, they were tactically superior and doctrinally superior to the forces of the ROC at that time, and for that reason, they decided to then chip in and give them the entirety of Soviet-occupied Manchuria as a base of operations to continue their civil war against the Republic of China and eventually overthrow them. In all of those situations, there was an initial amount of effort and energy that had to be put forward by these rebel groups to be able to show an international world that they were able to make some form of progress, and if you just gave them a little extra push in terms of monetary support or arms, they would be able to make it over the top and achieve their goals, also to the benefit of these foreign nations. Knowing that the state of Israel considers the Islamic Republic of Iran to be an incredibly hostile state and their primary enemy, not only within the region but within the world, we can heavily expect that the Mossad is watching with great interest to see if this rebellion will continue to grow and be successful, and if that is the case, we'll most likely see an increased amount of arms support and monetary support to these rebels to help them build up their fighting base and also build up their international support base as well. We can also heavily anticipate that the CIA of the United States will most likely get involved at some point in the future in providing arms, intelligence, or financial support to these rebels as well to help them with their ongoing revolution, considering that the Iranians are currently the U.S.'s largest regional threat within the Middle East. So while we're not seeing those arms provided from international countries right now, I would tell you all that if this rebellion continues to have a great deal of success into the next week or two, we'll probably start to see some weapons from, say, maybe Israel or the United States, or at least some weapons that look a little bit fishy. They generally look Iranian, but not necessarily so, start to pop up inside of Iran, and that'll generally show us there's some form of foreign intelligence support that's now being provided to this group. So with that in mind, we are going to be moving on into some more clips while we get all of y'all's opinion on the next statement that's been made by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. But before we get on into that, which is back in Tehran, we are going to move y'all on down south of Isfahan and just a little bit north of the city of Shiraz. Shiraz is actually one of the largest cities within southern Iran, and just north of that is the city of Marvdast. This city is generally a suburb to the city of Shiraz, and it is one that is somewhat significant, at least over the course of the day, as a report did come out that there was active firing in the town, and we were able to see Iranian security forces were openly firing live rounds at the rebels within this city. We can see the Iranian security forces pushing forward, at least at this point. And we now hear them firing rounds. We hear some of the members of the security teams yelling out orders or some sort of information to each other, and apparently stopping a car and telling them to turn around.
Oh, dang.
Earlier on in the day, we actually saw that those very same security forces had been pushed out of the town by rebel forces and were having to actively retreat from the area, meaning that the central area of Mavats actually fell under the control of the rebels for around a 24-hour period and may be contested even at this moment. In this clip, we can see the internal security forces actually having to retreat from the rebels. This was earlier, before the video we just saw a moment ago.
Is that somebody just screaming in the background or something?
I think there's some guy on a megaphone, I think, just screaming into it or something.
Yeah, really? I couldn't figure out what that was for a second. I guess it is.
Yeah, I would suppose so. I was just playing the video. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to let that be a mystery to most folks. I don't know what that is, but we'll eventually figure that out one way or another. But right now, currently, the city of Marvdast, just north of Shiraz, is currently embroiled in active fighting, from what we can tell, between the internal security services and the rebels, as the rebels did secure a hold in the central area of the city earlier today, completely pushing the government out. But it appears that the government is now trying to push back in and retake the city in the most recent clip that we got, which was the nighttime clip we showed first. Moving us further on north and towards to the area of the city, the smaller city at that, of Asna, and I want to show this because this is actually showing how widespread this is. If I try and find y'all the city of Asna here, it's actually a little bit difficult to find. Karamabad is the nearest major city, but Asna is quite a small one from what we can tell. It's basically what would be called a rural town in most parts of the Islamic Republic of Iran, and even here there was such a large element of people that apparently we got news of the first government fatalities that we can 100% confirm at this point out of this incredibly small town of Asna. Nobody would, I'm not even kidding, folks, this is what's wild about this. This ongoing revolution is so widespread that even small rural towns, which would usually never feel the ebb and flow of a revolution this heavily, are even coming under the susceptibility of making major international news because even the rebellion is spreading into the countryside into small rural towns like these. We have heard that in this town today, according to the IRGC-affiliated FARS network, they have claimed that 3 people were killed and 7 wounded after an attack on a police headquarters in the town of Asna in the Loristan province. This is the very Asna in the Loristan province that was mentioned by the FARS News Network, stating that police vehicles were torched and firearms were seized/stolen by the rebels. This town right here has had its entire police station ransacked with every single weapon inside stolen, and 3 people, it's indeterminate whether those were police officers or the rebels, killed in the midst of this battle that happened within the town to take control of the police station here. That is something that is quite literally unheard of, at least in most revolutions that would be smaller or put down quite quickly. If the government is not able to contain these ongoing revolutions just to the major cities, they are already going to start losing this, because they will not be able to ensure that their rear lines, such as supply or any form of ability to move around the country rapidly, may not be threatened by insurgents within the countryside that conduct ambushes or attacks on military and police convoys that may be trying to travel from city to city and assist in putting down these ongoing rebellions. Outside of Asna and moving further on north towards the city of Hamadan, we also heard in the smaller town of Nahavan that there was ongoing fighting in the streets of this town as well, with video footage also showing that.
Oh, wow. Oh, wait a minute. Wait a second. Is this group right here charging? Those are the security forces?
Yeah, these are the security forces.
Wow, that's interesting. Some of them are uniformed and they have riot shields, and then some of them are just in civilian clothes running with them.
Yeah, it's a really ragtag group. I mean, honestly, when you look at this at first glance, you would think that these are the rebels, but this is actually the internal security forces of Iran, and they're poorly equipped. I mean, some of them are wearing civilian clothes and wearing riot shields. Others have nothing, and some of them are completely kitted up in riot gear with firearms. It's literally just a wild mix of whatever anyone could get together, and it's basically a mob against a mob. The mob of the government, pro-government people, against the anti-government people who are currently conducting the rebellion. So it's going to be pretty hard to distinguish them from each other. But if you see anyone, folks, with a riot shield or any form of police gear on, you can generally assume that that entire group is going to be with the internal security forces of the Iranian government. This guy's just here to get his steps in today. This guy who's just kind of walking. Oh, we see them mobbing the cameraman and taking the camera out.
Damn, that's crazy right there. I see some people questioning whether or not those guys with the riot shields and the civilians, or allegedly civilians mixed in with the security forces, are maybe the rioters and they stole the shields. I think this might actually be the security forces. I think I'm with the enforcer with this. It appears to be. My guess is the Iranians probably have plainclothes security officers that are probably trying to mix into the crowds to try to spy on them and sneak up behind their lines. Probably that's probably what they're up to. And these are also probably just ununiformed officers that are charging with these rioters.
I think that's actually the case. It's either, well, I would say that civilians are probably not involved in this at all. This is probably just plainclothes officers of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. And you also have to remember, folks, the IRGC is not the only enforcement element of the Islamic Republic of Iran, and a lot of countries like these that are heavily authoritarian will rely on a lot of people who look like normal folks dressed in normal civilian clothes to do a lot of the heavy lifting inside of their country. The best example of that would be East Germany, or the Deutsche Demokratische Republik, as it was called in German, but I said it incredibly butchered. The Germans relied heavily on the Stasi, which was basically their version of the KGB, as an internal security force, and also a foreign intelligence and sabotage and espionage group as well. But primarily on the domestic side of things, the Stasi actually had a much larger amount of ununiformed members of the Stasi and informants than they did actual unified members. It actually turned out when the wall fell in between the two Germanys and all of the public paperwork and filing of the Stasi became public, it actually turned out, I believe it was something like a crazy number of like 1 in every 5 people in East Germany were a member of the Stasi or were an active informant to the Stasi, informing and spying on their neighbors in support of the German government, or the East German government specifically. So you do have to remember that a lot of these people who are currently assisting in the, I guess you could say, anti-rebellion forces may actually be plainclothes members of some internal Iranian agency similar to that are now having to be called forward by the Iranian government in an emergency to get involved in the fight against the active rebellion that's ongoing right now. Moving us on out of Navahan, though, and on up into the area of Hamadan, we also got a lot of news, and major news at that, out of the city of Hamadan. The ongoing uprising within the area is very significant within this town, and it appears that this is the second town that we can confirm has generally fallen to rebel forces over the course of this day. Fires were breaking out within the area, and we could see a large amount of people basically all over the street with a path of cars passing through them. I gotta say, I really do respect the rebels. They believe in the flow of traffic. They do make sure to clear a path for them to still get through, even in the midst of the ongoing battles that are literally happening inside of the city. Meanwhile, we also saw that internal security forces were also opening fire in Hamadan as well in this clip.
Oh.
Also, by the way,
insane right there. That is wild to see that. They have this guys running right into the crowds of civilians. The civilians, I don't even think they were armed in this clip. Like, obviously, in some places, the civilians have gotten AK rifles from the police stations, at least according to what we've heard. But these guys were just running into an unarmed crowd, from what we can tell.
Yeah, from what we could tell, they were just running into an unarmed crowd. Also, another thing that's important to note, folks, because everyone always believes, at least that don't really get involved in a lot of the nitty-gritty details, that government forces are always going to be unifiedly uniform, meaning that everyone's going to be wearing the exact same equipment. And that is not the case at all, especially inside of Iran. In between these two guys, which are both a part of the internal security forces, we can see that this guy is wearing a black balaclava, while this guy appears to be wearing some sort of an olive drab beanie. So, completely different headgear. They're also wearing completely different shades of camouflage. The man over here in the background is wearing a more so green camouflage pattern, while this guy is wearing a light tan, light green camo pattern. They both are wearing the same pants, but it appears that their shoes and boots are also different as well. One might be wearing shoes while the other is wearing boots. So, when you see Iranian security forces, they're not going to look like the stuff that you see in propaganda. I'll actually pull that up really quickly because this is something that's very deceiving. Let me just go pull up, say, the IRGC to give an example here. And let's see. You know what? We'll go with this picture right here, where they look like absolute clowns. And whenever they show pictures to the public, they make them look like the IRGC and any internal forces in Iran are always going to be equally uniformed. They're going to have the same gear on, the same equipment, so you'll be able to distinguish them because you just have to know one outfit, and that's their outfit. In absolute reality, it's not the case. The equipment is heavily mismatched. The Iranian government isn't an incredibly wealthy government at that, so you'll see that there will be a literal hodgepodge of different forms of camouflage, uniforms, and equipment used by the very same squad in the very same police force in a singular city. And so it's going to be a lot more difficult to tell who's internal security forces or not, but believe us, folks, we're doing the best we can here on the channel to make sure to discern who is security forces and who isn't. And considering that these guys were firing into an unarmed crowd, it makes it quite clear that they're part of the internal security forces. Outside of that, though, no matter how much they tried to fire into that crowd today, it didn't really appear to do them too much, as the central area of the city of Hamadan did fall to rebel forces over the course of the day. The protesters did storm the police station and had taken control of some of the streets within the area of Hamadan, and it appeared that they are now in control of the entire inner ring road of the city where most government forces and most government offices would have been based out of. This means that right now, internal security forces and the Iranian government are most likely basing their forces inside of Chevron, Madani Town, or Gora Choka, outside of the outskirts of the city of Hamadan, and will most likely be preparing to push back in the city, most likely using heavy firepower to try and quell the rebels or force them into hiding or force them to scatter, one form or the other. Before we move on towards Qom and Tehran, which we also have a little bit of additional news to cover, as well as in the outskirts of the Islamic Republic of Iran and Sabzafar, way off in the northeast of the country, I do want to make sure that we address one question, a fairly important one at this point. This rebellion is quite clearly a rebellion without a doubt at this point. These rebels are arming themselves, they're pushing the government out of the cities, they're basically, quite literally, usurping the Iranian government in real time at this point, and it's happening at a far faster pace than most people would anticipate. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has openly threatened that they will respond decisively if the unrest continues, which has led a lot of people to wonder what that ominous statement by the IRGC would insinuate and what they might be planning. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right, so what does Iran mean when they say they're going to respond decisively against these rioters if the unrest continues? And basically, what are they planning? So 72% said to start massacres on civilians. That's what Iran's planning to do, while 14% said they plan on bringing in foreign troops from other countries. And 6% said Iran wants to provide a compromise to the Iranians and bring this thing to an end. So the one thing you can pretty much count on here is Iran is not going to compromise. That is not something a dictatorial regime ever does. That goes against the entire premise of a dictatorship. So I would say the odds of that is extremely low. When they say respond decisively, they mean in a violent way. I strongly believe they're referring to starting massacres on civilians, worse than we're even seeing right now, because we're already seeing in the clips, as we've seen throughout the night, that the Iranian security forces are firing on unarmed civilians in the middle of these cities in various different places. So that's obviously terrible. Obviously, these people, most of them are unarmed, and they're getting shot at with AK rifles. So that's obviously the start of a massacre, but I think it's going to get much worse once the Ayatollah starts freaking out and panicking even more than he is right now. You'll probably see these grow in size and severity. So bad things ahead, unfortunately. Honestly, my heart goes out to the Iranians that are trying to get their freedom here, because they are in for a really, really rough ride coming up, because they say the Ayatollah is sweating bullets right now in the bunker and sweating buckets, they say, and he is panicking. So they usually things start going really extreme when the dictator starts panicking like this, and I think they're going to be seeing that very, very soon. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd say they're probably not going to be making a compromise at the moment with the Iranian rebels, because we don't know of any centralized leadership right now, at least inside of Iran, that the Iranian government could negotiate with. even if that was possible, the Iranian government is most likely not going to negotiate with it, because we have to remember, folks, that the Islamic Republic of Iran is ideologically an extremist organization. Extremist organizations, especially ones that are in control of a government, do not negotiate with active rebels. They put them down with extremely large amounts of force. You can look, for example, into North Korea throughout its bloody history over the past 70 years, since it was founded in about 1946, to see many such example where the Kims would massacre anyone who was a part of an attempted coup, or may even be alleged to have possibly been a part of a planned coup at some point. You can see that within the Soviet Union, significant amounts of purges and massacres and mass arrests were conducted against people who were believed to possibly be leading some sort of a revolution against the government. You can look at Nazi Germany, where anyone who attempted to assassinate Hitler was usually met with great reprisals, and people who were even alleged to have known about the possible attempt and did not notify the government were also subject to heavy reprisals as well. Any dictatorial government where such an action is conducted against the government is never met lightly. It is always met with an extreme amount of force and extreme amount of violence that, quite honestly, is going to be that government's undoing in the long run. The Islamic Republic of Iran will not negotiate, even if there was a centralized command to this group at the moment, because it's against their very beliefs. They're going to put these people down, probably ending up with massacres in most of these cities that'll kill dozens, if not hundreds, of people in each city, or thousands across the entirety of the country. That will be quite bad for them. I would actually say that'd be very bad for them in reality. So I would say that that's going to be the high likelihood. I would be with 72%. But that's not going to end this rebellion. If anything, that's usually what makes it far worse. Nicolae Ceausescu and his fall in Romania was also a great example of that. And if y'all would like to know more about that, there are plenty of documentaries on YouTube documenting the fall of Nicolae Ceausescu in Romania, and also his execution on state television in Romania after he was deposed by the Romanian public. Now, I won't get into the huge details of that story because I've already given 3 other examples, but in 1989, the Romanian government actually collapsed entirely. Nicolae Ceausescu had tried to position himself and build himself up into basically the Kim Il-sung or the Kim Jong-il of Romania. And it didn't really go too well. The guy's plans were absolutely stupid, and his cult of personality attempts didn't really turn out too well. In 1989, the Romanian public, which had had growing resentment against him for years, had had enough. And generally, they understood that, the Ceausescus did, him and his wife. And so for that reason, they had a little meeting at the presidential palace where they tried to wave to a crowd of people and have a pro-Ceausescu rally inside of Romania, specifically down this main corridor here that they built inspired after Paris. The crowd actually wasn't filled with pro-Ceausescu people. They were actually people who hated him and were literally there to kill him. So then they charged the building, broke into it, and were literally racing up the floors to the balcony that he was on. And the Romanian government forces in that area actually started to fire into the crowd. Instead of dispersing them, it made them even more violent. They started to overrun these soldiers and started to beat some of them to death or beat them near to death while he was trying to get onto the roof to get in a helicopter and fly out of the capital. He was then caught by Romanian authorities outside of the capital because at that point, quite literally everyone, including the government, knew the winds were not in Ceausescu's favor, so they decided to side with the rebels. And then they commanded his helicopter to land. They had a show trial, and literally live on Romanian TV, they walked him outside of the building that they literally had the trial in with an AK. They sprayed down both the Ceausescus and killed them both on sight. So, firing into crowds and conducting massacres, a lot like in that incident, it isn't really something that works too well in the end. I can't really think of a lot of historical examples where that works incredibly well, unless if a government just came into power and there's still a great deal of instability. But at this moment, folks, we actually have more footage coming out of the Islamic Republic of Iran that we would like to show y'all here on air if we can. So let me go.
Yeah. We actually just got a new clip of footage here, which is quite interesting for one reason. There appears to be one of the rioters going through the streets on a motorcycle, and he's flying the Lion and Sun flag, which is essentially the flag of the 1979 Islamic Revolution. So that's the first time we've seen that flag being flown during the entire time. So that gives us a clue of what the ideology is of the rioters, or at least of this one particular place where the uprising is taking part part in right now in that city. So that is interesting right there. Enforcer, what can you tell us about that, by the way, from a historical context?
So that is actually not the flag of the 1979 revolution. That would actually be the flag of the Kingdom of Persia. The Kingdom of Persia was a nation that came into being, generally, at least in its form when it was overthrown in 1979, by a U.S.-led, kind of a British U.S.-led coup d'etat that was conducted in Iran in 1954 under Allen Dulles, who generally a lot of people consider to be the top guy in the CIA, because basically everything that the CIA ever did that we know about these days was done by him when he was in the head of the agency. But nevertheless, that is the flag of Persia, and I'll actually show you all that in a little bit of greater detail. It's this flag right here. It's basically the flag of the Islamic Republic of Iran without the Islamic imagery. It's more so Persian-based imagery and that of the Persian monarchy. So once again, it is showing that they want to overthrow the current government and bring back whatever existed before the revolution, or something similar to it.
That is interesting. So would this seem to indicate that they're looking for Reza Pahlavi? Is that who this flag would pretty much represent?
It's possible, or it may just represent some form of a government that actually represents the Persian people instead of the Islamic Revolution, which is technically what the Islamic Republic of Iran's government claims that they represent. The Iran's government, to stop saying the official name because it's long and windy, long-winded, but the Iranian government right now says that they exist for the Islamic Revolution, not really for the Iranian people. So they say that everyone in the country serves in the interests of the Islamic Revolution and nothing further than that. That's why they conduct terrorist actions by supporting Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis throughout the region, and do literally anything and everything to try and destabilize countries that go against their interests, even including countries like Saudi Arabia, because it's in the interest of their so-called Islamic Revolution, not in the interest of the Iranian people. This may be showing that they're wanting to bring back a government that actually represents the interests of the Persian or Iranian people, not the Islamic Revolution.
That is fascinating to see that, by the way. Also, that is the first, like I mentioned a moment ago, that's the first time we've seen any type of flag being flown through this whole situation, and we're not being told which city this took place in. So this was in, obviously, one of the cities where the uprising is currently breaking out, but we're not told exactly where. So this could represent the entire movement, or it could be maybe just a handful of people that this represents. We're just not sure.
Yeah, I would have to say it's quite interesting. It's just generally showing that anti-government sentiment that we see in the rebels at the moment. But fairly interesting. I mean, that is the first flag that we've ever seen, folks, and it is once again very much in line with being anti-Islamic Revolution and more so pro-Persian. I have a feeling, folks, that if the Iranians are, the Islamic Republic's government is overthrown, we're probably going to see this country named something along the lines of the Kingdom of Persia or the Republic of Persia, one or the other, because practically everything that these people keep chanting and keep representing in symbology is going directly back to Persia, not Iran, which was the government that existed up until 1979. So a little bit interesting with that, and it's also fairly indicative of the sort of sentiments that they have. But moving on from that and getting into a couple of more of the clips that we have inside of Tehran, Qom, and also Sabzavar, we are going to be moving on into Qom, where we were able to see that internal security forces were pelted with stones by the rebels within this city. Bro, the police tried to ride in like a motorcycle gang, and then they just got stones rained on them. I guess they just had to race on through, because here they go, and there goes the stones. I mean, there's stones literally flying everywhere.
That's crazy, too. I guess you could say in this situation, sticks and stones, they did hurt their bones, and also the words hurt, too, because they're just literally cursing at them.
Man, basically the old saying in Iran is everything hurts. Like, that's just
yeah, pretty much.
Oh, man. Oh, looks like government influence is still being curbed within Qom. Moving on up into Tehran, we also saw some additional news coming out of the area, including that Russia is flying in enough IL-76s to create a small air force. At least 5 IL-76 cargo aircraft have flown to Tehran in the past 48 hours. We think this might be some form of emergency stopgap support that the Russians are trying to provide to Iran, and that may also lead us to believe that the Iranians have provided information to the Russian Federation that they believe the situation is dangerous and that they require immediate support in any form that Russia might be able to provide. It's basically mutual assistance. The Iranians have provided a great deal of drones to the Russians throughout the war in Ukraine, so in turn, if the Iranians are in trouble, it appears that the Russians are trying to return the favor and just fly literal weapons shipments into Iran in the midst of this all to try and give them a little bit more equipment to work with to deal with the ongoing rebellion. Outside of that, we also saw within Tehran itself, or generally within random areas of Iran, more clips that we couldn't really ascertain exactly where they were from, but it was showing the rebellion. Well, that was something to say the least. And we also got this other clip here of a guard that apparently ignited for a small second and then was extinguished because a Molotov hit nearby to him or on him. So, they're definitely going at it. That's without a doubt. Moving on out of that and on into a little bit more of the news that we got from inside of the Islamic Republic of Iran's capital. We did hear that there are now nationwide calls for protests in Tehran tomorrow, which may turn into an uprising quite literally within the middle of the capital. And we've also seen that there is some more words from Reza Pahlavi, which we already covered earlier on the air. Meanwhile, all the way out the northeastern part of the country, where we have seen in Sabzahar, apparently the bus siege headquarters within the city was also burned down by the rebels within this area.
Oh, right in the door. Look at that. They chucked that thing straight through the front door.
Man, I mean, that guy has got an arm on him. The NBA ought to see about putting him on a basketball team. Look at this. I mean, man, that's a three-pointer right there.
What a shabby building, too. Very shabby.
Yeah, for a literal government headquarters, I mean, that's rough looking. That looks like something folks out of an Indiana Jones movie where he goes to, like, Morocco or something like that. That doesn't look too good. But anyways, with that, that's all of the video and picture evidence and all of the news that we have coming out of the Islamic Republic of Iran today, and it's painting a pretty clear picture, and I'm sure many of y'all can tell what picture that's painting, because we've been covering it for an entire hour now. Before we move on from that, though, we do have to talk about those little flights. And when I mean little, it was actually a very large number of flights, abnormally large. The 5 flights of the IL-76s into Tehran over just the past 48 hours. And Matthew, what are people thinking about those flights, and what are you thinking about them as well?
All right, so the Russians are sending in cargo planes left and right to the Iranian capital, and they keep landing over and over, and we're really not sure what they're carrying on board, but I think we have an idea of what's going on. But what do you think in the audience? 38% said Russia is arming Iran to fight the rioters, while 27% said Russia is likely evacuating the Iranian government officials, and 28% said Russia is arming Iran for an upcoming war with Israel instead. So, to me, this appears to be an emergency movement, at least in my personal opinion, that Russia is trying to arm Iran to fight the rioters. Because if it is true, which it does appear to be so, that the rioters are breaking into police offices and also raiding the armories, that means that Iran is going to be low on weapons, and Russia is trying to supplement them, likely by bringing in these weapons here. So I would say that's likely the case. They probably have not evacuated the Iranian government yet, because it hasn't quite gotten to that point. They'll probably do that in the near future if it keeps escalating, but they probably won't do that right this second. So I'm with the 38%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that they might be trying to arm the rioters at this moment. I don't think they're arming them for the upcoming war with Israel. I think that this situation is a lot more pressing than the possible war with Israel, because if the Iranian government can't survive this, they won't even be around to fight Israel in about a couple of weeks. So I think, if anything, this will probably be provided to support them in the fight against the citizenry, basically. So I would say that would be with the 39% for that reason. That's probably the armed support that's being provided. They're certainly not evacuating the Iranian government. the nation isn't on the very cusp of falling right now, and usually leaders wait until the very last minute, especially when their nation is in the midst of collapse, to flee, because there might be a situation where they could recover the entire quagmire that they're in. But if they leave early, they're basically demoralizing all of their loyalists and basically giving up the fight immediately and losing outright, basically forfeiting, when there could be a possibility of victory in the horizon at some place somewhere. So I'd have to say they're probably arming the rioters. I would have to be with the 39%. But before we move on,
Also, it's quite interesting as well. It looks like a lot of people are saying that they think that maybe the Wagner Group is being transported into Iran to fight the rioters. We have not seen any credible evidence of that. It is possible, of course. We don't know what's on these aircraft, but we haven't seen any evidence of it. Also, by the way, the Wagner Group is not what it used to be. It's not like that formidable force that it was when Prigozhin was still alive. It's pretty much been disbanded for the most part and absorbed into the Russian Ministry of Defense. So if they're sending forces, it would most likely be a detachment of the Russian military if they were doing that. And as we all know, they really don't have the force numbers to warrant sending troops to Iran. So I personally don't think that's the case. It is possible, but I find it to be unlikely.
I would have to agree. And before we move on from that, folks, I do want to make sure that we get a couple of questions from the chat before we get on into the rest of the news for the night. So, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our first of 3 super chats, and then jumping right back to the news, and we have very big news out of Ukraine, etc. Jumping into our first super chat, this one goes to none other than Bobby, also known as LC39A, and he put in a very generous $100 support to keep the channel running. And thank you very much, Bobby, for always throwing in that support, and we appreciate that very much as always. And Bobby said, here's an old 60s chant: the people united will never be defeated.
Hey, thank you so much for the massive support, Bobby, or LC39A, as you used to be known. And I'd have to definitely say that's going to probably end up being true in Iran with how things are going right now. The people united appear that they cannot be defeated, and it looks like, at least if this keeps going the way it is, they'll probably keep this rolling until the Iranian government might actually be overthrown. We haven't seen anything like this in recent times. As a matter of fact, I don't think we've seen a situation get this bad in Iran ever. So I think that that's actually probably going to end up being a very true statement, especially in hindsight when we look back at this moment in, say, a month or two or a couple of months from now. But a humongous thanks to you so much once again for the support, Bobby, and helping this channel to keep on running. All the way from Canada, Bobby is a legend of the LSA, and it massively supports this channel and helps us to keep it running. And I gotta say a humongous thanks to you, because if it wasn't for folks like you, who went out of their way to support this channel, we wouldn't be able to keep our lights on here at the Enforcer HQ to be able to cover this news for all the folks each and every single day. Right now, we have had, at the peak, about 17,000 live viewers tonight, and 85,000 people have watched in the first hour. So it's been quite a show tonight, and it appears that a lot of people are interested in the ongoing developments from the Islamic Republic of Iran, and we thank you all for choosing our channel to hear of exactly what's going on down there on the ground. And we thank you, Bobby, for supporting this channel so that way everyone has a channel to come to be able to hear about what's going on down there in Iran. And so a humongous thanks to you so much once again, and we are on to the second to last question of this segment.
And this one goes to Mark Ead, another channel legend, and he throws in a $50 support. And thank you very much, Mark, as well, for once again supporting the channel bigly, and we appreciate that. He said, on 2/01/26, that's February 1st of 2026, and New Zealand, and Happy New Year to those celebrating today. And take one from the chat, fellas. LSA from New Zealand.
And a big LSA to all the folks down there in New Zealand, once again to Mark Ead, who threw in incredible support to this channel. And I gotta say, a big Happy New Year's to everyone who did celebrate New Year's Day today, which would be us included, and most of our viewers in the United States. I hope that all y'all have had a great day, and I hope that everyone else who's now already in January 2nd have also had a great day as well, because it's a great thing to know that we're entering the new year with a new leaf, at least being turned inside of Iran. But, you know, elsewhere in the world, it's yet to be seen. But a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the last question of this segment, and then we're going to be getting on into the rest of the news from around the world.
And the live chat question in honor of Mark Ead is going to go to Crazy Eggman. And he said, has anyone dropped any type of humanitarian aid for Iranians? And water needs to be provided at the minimum. And what's y'all's thoughts?
There has been no humanitarian aid provided because the Iranian government has not requested the aid, and as long as they are the sovereign government of the country, nobody can conduct flights into Iran without the Iranian government's permission. I would say that humanitarian assistance and aid should always be the priority of a civilized nation. I mean, we're not barbarians, and people who are desperate in bad situations ought to be assisted and helped. But at that point, though, I would also say that I wouldn't get into an open shooting match with the Iranian government to try and provide humanitarian assistance on the ground. Not to say that I would want to punish the citizenry, but if the citizenry want the global world to be able to help them when they're in a fix, I think that they ought to continue on this little rebellion here and overthrow their government so that we can actually provide support and assistance to them, because they'll be able to officially request it, and then we'll be able to officially provide it and help out those folks. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can in my opinion. But Matthew, what do you think?
Me personally, I would say that I tend to always lean toward the humanitarian side of things, even though we are obviously enemies with the Iranian government. The people are trying to break free, and also there's an ongoing massive humanitarian crisis with the water. So I would agree with Crazy Eggman. If there was a way to safely do it, I would be in favor of helping the Iranian civilians get more water and also prevent them from dying of thirst. But at the same time, though, I am with the enforcer on this, that we can't put American service people or NATO service people or anybody at risk to do that, because we don't want to get into a situation where we're literally fighting the Iranians while they're trying to overthrow their wicked government. So we don't want to do that. So we don't want to make it worse, in other words, is what I'm saying here. So the way I look at it is this. It kind of sounds a little bit harsh, a little bit crude, but the protesters will remain very motivated to keep moving forward and pushing out their government if they remain in a bad situation. I'm not saying that I like that, but of course it does provide a lot of motivation for them to keep doing what they're doing and overthrow the Ayatollah and get rid of that horrific extremist regime. So once they get them overthrown, I say give them all the help that we can possibly provide them at that point. But until we can do it safely, then I would say we have to hold off.
I would have to agree. And so with that, I hope that does address your question well. And a big thanks to you for the support and help with this channel to keep on running. And with that, folks, it's time for us to get on into the rest of the news that we have from around the world. We still have some really interesting news to get on into. Just to wrap out our Middle Eastern news, though, before we move on, the Israelis, at least according to Channel 12, are now reporting that they're preparing to fight on 3 fronts this year: Iran, Lebanon, and the West Bank. Huh, wow. I gotta tell y'all, folks, it's like, I'm not gonna lie, I can't really disagree with the idea of fighting the Iranian government because it is an open enemy of the United States. But at the same time, I've got to say, isn't it kind of a little bit crazy that Israel literally cannot go like 2 weeks without a war? They're basically like a kid that doesn't have a vape. Like, it's, if there isn't a war going on, it's like the government over there is fiending to get back into one. So apparently they're getting ready to go and do something. And we know that Netanyahu was down in West Palm Beach trying to get the U.S. on board with joining them on their escapades around the Middle East. So, we'll see how all of that goes. But I can promise you all this: the Israelis are going to be doing what they do. I'll be entirely honest with y'all, folks. At this point, I put Israel in the same camp as the Turks. Turkey does Turkey things. Israel does Israel things. Both of them don't necessarily operate within U.S. interests much, if at all. It's basically whatever is convenient for them. But it appears that they're going to be trying to hold off that prosecution just a little bit longer. So we'll see how that goes. And moving on over in Afghanistan, we also heard that a MQ-9 Reaper actually crashed up in the Hindu Kush mountain range within northern Afghanistan. The locals were observing the crash site.
Landed on top of a mountain.
Yeah, way up.
أنا سامع شو تصوريدين يا راديو غرزة ولا والله لا.
I wonder how these guys spotted this thing crashed up here, because with it being so remote, they must have seen it go down or something.
Yeah, I guess they must have seen like a smoke plume or something, and it got them interested, and they went up here because there does seem to be some burning residue or burn residue on the snow, which probably showed that there was some sort of a smoke plume that came from this area. And because of that, they then went up there and conducted their little investigation and then filmed it. I gotta say, it's kind of a little wild to see that they have that much, that much equipment in terms of technology. I really didn't expect them to have an iPhone, but apparently they had one. So, that was shot on an iPhone. But moving on out of the Middle East, or generally Central Asia, and on over into the area of East Asia, we have been able to see that the Republic of China is continuing to conduct its drills throughout the island. This has been pretty much a response due to Operation Justice Mission 2025 by the Chinese, which the Chinese have declared has ended, but the Republic of China is still carrying out immediate readiness drills still today and in recent days amid the military activity during Operation Justice Mission 2025, including the CM-32s. We also were able to see this M1A2T once more. We also were able to see the soldiers of the Republic of China's army apparently conducting drills near to what appears to be some sort of an anti-aircraft missile launcher or an anti-ship missile launcher, not really sure which. And we can also see here one of the Mirage 2005Fs of the Republic of China's Air Force taking off for continued readiness drills. This one equipped with Magic 2s and Mika EMs, which is a pretty well-laden firepower load. Pretty interesting stuff right there, to say the least. The United States Department of State has finally chipped in at least an official statement and has made the following. China's military activities and rhetoric towards Taiwan and others in the region increase tensions unnecessarily. We urge Beijing to exercise restraint, cease its military pressure against Taiwan, and instead engage in meaningful dialogue. So we finally heard an official statement, folks, from the Department of State, and they're urging calm in the face of chaos. A calming voice in the storm, folks. Really appreciate that. But moving on from that and out of East Asia, we are going to be moving on over and into the hunt for Captain Jack Sparrow. We have like 3 clips of news from this area today. It's going to be very quick. Moving us on down into the Atlantic. It's not even the Caribbean anymore. The Bella 1 is still being chased at this moment. It's been about 2 weeks, I think, and the Coast Guard is still in hot pursuit of the Bella 1. We've heard that the Carolina's squatted oil tanker has apparently started to fly the Russian flag. And now we've heard that a formal demand has been made by the Russian Federation that the United States stop its pursuit of the oil tanker that has been sailing away from Venezuela and is now fleeing the Coast Guard, according to 2 people with knowledge on the matter. So Russia called us up on the cell phone and made a literal diplomatic demand for us to stop chasing this vessel because they claim that the Bella 1 is actually a Russian crude carrier, not an Iranian one. And from what we can see, the Bella 1, according to all reports, at least the alleged ones, is now flying a Russian flag while it's still being pursued, and is apparently claiming that it's actually not an Iranian tanker, it's a Russian tanker. The United States has apparently been waffling with what to do. So I'm sure the president will continue on with his amazing record of waffling here over the next few days, and we'll see this pursuit goes on for another week before a decision's made. But apparently they're considering that they're either going to back off and stop chasing the ship because Russia put a call in on the cell phone, or apparently others are saying that the U.S. is considering the ship to be stateless and that they're going to continue the pursuit. One official who spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss an ongoing law enforcement matter said that the current administration continued to view the tanker as stateless because it was flying a false flag when it was first approached by the Coast Guard and the active blockade. We don't know if that's actually accurate or not. Once again, folks, we're hearing 2 different stories. They're either considering the ship stateless and they're going to continue the pursuit, whether or not the Russians put a call in, or apparently they're considering backing off because the Russians put a call in. Literally 2 completely opposite stories, and we're not really sure which one is which. Still, a lot of people right now are putting in their thoughts and opinions on what the United States might be doing or might be planning to do as far as the ongoing pursuit of the Bella 1 crude tanker that was technically Iranian, now Russian, in the midst of the pursuit. So, Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about it as well?
So this is certainly an interesting situation now, because if y'all recall, we were speculating as to why the U.S. had not boarded this vessel in the past, because they've been pursuing it for, I think it's almost a week at this point. I can't remember exactly how long it's been. It's been a while, though. They've been chasing this thing across the Atlantic, and we've been wondering, why have they not jumped on board? Because they were real quick to jump on board the Chinese supertanker, as well as some other Iranian-linked vessels, but not the Bella 1, though. There's something unique about that one, and we were saying that maybe the crew was armed. That was one possibility, and that's why maybe the U.S. wasn't boarding it, or possibly either Iran or Russia or China was threatening the United States not to board board it, and maybe they were not boarding it for that reason. So it turns out it was the latter. It turns out that Putin is now directly warning the United States not to board it, and apparently, at least according to reports, the crew apparently whipped out a Russian flag or painted a Russian flag somewhere on the vessel, which is kind of wild to see that. But 40% said the USA will now back off that Putin is involved, while 35% said the USA will still seize the tanker, and 19% said it's a 50-50 chance of either. And I would say at this point, I think the USA is going to back off. For whatever reason, they were willing to seize a Chinese super tanker, but they're not likely to seize a Russian-aligned vessel. And once again, it's all alleged, folks, so take that as you will. This is all according to reports, so take it with a grain of salt. But I personally think I'm with the 39%. The USA will back off, and they'll probably let the ship go. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would be with the 39% as well. We're probably going to back off, but I would tell you all what I would do as president. I would tell the Russians, well, that's unfortunate. Shouldn't have run one of your ships straight through a U.S. blockade. You wouldn't have this problem. And then I'd seize it anyways. At this point, just due to the fact that they put in a diplomatic demand, I would hit the ship with a hellfire and knock out the engine and machinery spaces to stop the ship and board it, and then have it towed by tug back to the United States if necessary. I don't know why in the world we give such a white gloves treatment to the Russians, because the Russians have an incredibly small economy. It's smaller than the state of Texas in the United States. They have a very small population. Militarily, they're absolutely terrible at what they do. They're hardly even holding the line right now in Ukraine, and it's been 4 years. And then on top of that, we will go, though, on the same note, and we'll seize one of the largest crude carriers in the world from the Chinese, who are the second largest economy on the world, the basically second best military in the world, right next to the United States in terms of size and possible capabilities. And we'll go do that just fine. And they're also nuclear armed as well. That's like, before someone comes in and go, well, the Russians got nuclear bombs. I don't know if you know this, but the Chinese are also nuclear armed as well. And basically every single one of their nuclear weapons is strategic in scale and range and can hit the United States. So the Chinese are as big a threat to us, if not even larger in many more ways, than the Russians. Yet we'll seize their tanker, one of the largest ones in the world. But when it comes to a Russian tanker, though, an absolute beater at that, it's not even a great-looking tanker, and it's not even in good condition. If the Russians put in a call, then we'll hold off. And we'll go, oh, we can't mess with a Russian tanker. I tell them, do something about it, and I'd seize the tanker anyways. It's just, but, of course, folks, we don't know what the U.S. is going to do. We might hear that they seize it in the next few days. I would hope that that's what we hear, because that's what we should be doing. Because at this point, what does this show? It shows the U.S. blockade is completely pointless. In fact, it's not even enforced. If a Russian can just make a call and go, don't seize my shit, and they can just sail right through a blockade or just run into it and then sail away without being seized, then the blockade is literally non-existent at that point. You're basically eroding the entire belief that everyone would have that the blockade will stop you and seize your ship, so don't pass through the blockade. You're completely getting rid of that assumption, and then everyone's going to try and challenge the blockade, and then we find ourselves in every single situation there with an incident to where we either have to fire upon an oil tanker and forcibly stop and board it, which could then become a much larger situation or look badly for the United States, or we just have to let them all through and our blockade is completely collapsed. It's one or the other at that point. And
also, why doesn't the U.S. ask Russia, since they're putting a formal diplomatic complaint to leave their vessel alone? They're claiming it's their vessel now, apparently. Why don't they ask them, well, what the hell was your vessel doing in Venezuela in the first place? It was violating sanctions, allegedly. So, I mean, what's up with that? I mean, you want us to leave your ship alone, but yet you want to violate sanctions at the same time. So, why should Russia get a pass? They shouldn't.
They shouldn't get a pass. I don't know why we're giving them a pass, and this shouldn't even be something that's happening right now, folks. This is, it's ridiculous that this is even being said as a possible point of deliberation. If I was the president, I would go, well, the hell with the Russians. So if the Russians want to stop us from seizing the ship, they can come down and escort this thing with one of their own warships and stop us from doing it that way. But I'll tell you this, they can't do that because they got no way to even get down to this area of the Atlantic. So they're up the creek without a paddle, and that's not our problem. They can launch any demand they want. If they want to stop us from doing something like this, they ought to have an ability to power project well enough that they could get their Navy down here to face us down and then actually get us in a real confrontation where we might actually have to back off. But they can't do that, So what's the point?
And also, another question to ask the Russians. There's a lot of questions that should be getting asked, and we don't know. Maybe in the background, maybe they're asking the Russians these questions. They're logical. Hopefully, they're being asked. But it's like, why was the vessel not flagged as a Russian vessel to begin with? I mean, clearly that shows that there was some type of attempt to covertly do whatever operations they were doing. Otherwise, it would have had a Russian flag on it to begin with. So, if I have it correct, I was trying to go back here and look at the information. I think the vessel was flagged out of Guyana before they painted a Russian flag on it. And I'm not even sure if you can legally change the flag of the vessel en route like that. Like, can you even legally do that?
Technically, I don't think you can. I would have to look into that a little bit more, though.
Yeah, I don't know if you can about that either. I think that's why they're arguing that maybe the vessel is stateless because, I mean, they're literally en route to a location and they're changing the flag of the vessel and painting a Russian flag on it, allegedly, once again. We haven't seen a picture of it, but that's what the reports are claiming right now. So this is just a wild situation here. If it turns out that all you have to do is start painting a Russian flag on your ship to escape the United States forces, then everybody's going to start doing that.
Yeah, I would agree. It appears that reflagging can be done, but it appears that you actually have to register the vessel in whatever country it's being reflagged out of. So it's not just as easy as a process of literally just taking down one flag and putting up another. You know, it's not the age of piracy out here in like the 1700s where you go, I'm British, and they're like, oh, thank heavens, actually I lied, yar, I'm a pirate, and then you put up the pirate flag. It's not like that anymore. You actually have to go through a process.
And also, they whipped out a paint bucket. So you're telling me their colors, the Russian flag, they just had paint on board, ready to paint the thing on there. Like they were carrying like buckets of the paint to paint the Russian flag on the ship. That's kind of wild in itself.
You know what's interesting about that though is that there's actually usually on most ships there's actually a flag chest or a area in the machinery or engine rooms where they just have loads of different sorts of paint. So that way, if anything is needed for maintenance purposes while underway, they can paint or raise a new flag to replace an old one. So literally when they started getting chased, the captain just said, go down to the flag chest in the machinery spaces, go get some paint to paint a Russian flag on the side of this thing, and we'll just send someone over the side, and we'll also just raise a Russian flag. Just go grab that out of the flag chest and go get that done. That's, I guess, what they did.
They must have been slathering that paint on there. Like they did that quick. Like if the reports are accurate, they were slathering that paint on there. They were smacking it on there like no tomorrow. They must have had some big paint brushes out to do that.
Dude, they literally sat there. You know the movie Lord of War with Nicolas Cage in it?
Yeah.
Dude, the captain was out there. The Kronos, the Dutch flag, get a Dutch flag. Send someone over the side, paint Kronos on this thing now. Like, bro, that's what he was doing. And then I guess they apparently had a direct line, folks, to the Russian Foreign Ministry or something like that as well. Which is also quite bizarre when you think about it, because apparently they called up someone in the Russian government that's now made an official diplomatic demand, which is also showing, to be entirely honest with y'all, that ship was Russian, because what vessel flagged out of Guyana, or possibly even Iranian, is going to have a direct line straight to the foreign ministry basically instantaneously? Not many. I'll tell you that off the bat. So apparently this is some sort of emergency maritime procedure that they had, that the Russian government provided them with. If in trouble, just call us. And apparently that's what they did by satellite phone or something else. But maybe, oh, you know what, Matthew? It just hit me. You know, they have no internet out there, so if they did call the Russian government, they called them by satellite phone, which is possible to be intercepted. The U.S. might have intercepted that call whenever it was made, and who knows how long ago that was made, and they heard them call up the foreign ministry, and that's why they've been waffling on this for this long, is because they're like, oh shit, now the Russian government's involved, now we're going to try and figure out what to do with that. So that might actually be the reason for the hesitancy, not the fact that they might be armed or anything else. It might be the fact that they intercepted a call by satellite phone to the Russian foreign ministry, and they're like, oh gee, now we got to figure that one out. That might be it.
Possibly so. The Venezuelans could have called. I mean, there's a lot of people that's been following this for a while, so there's no telling how this actually went down. But it seems like the Russians have been following this a lot longer than we've been aware of in the public, from the sounds of it.
I would definitely agree. Meanwhile, a B-1 Lancer did take off today from Dyce Air Force Base within Texas. That's near to Abilene, Texas, for those who may be familiar with Dyce Air Force Base. Really interesting place. But its transponder went off right after it took off, but it appeared to have been heading in the direction towards Venezuela, probably for a bombing drill of some sort, which is a fairly common occurrence these days. moving on from that, it's time, folks, for us to finally get on into Europe and the war in Ukraine, or at least a little bit of the European news before we get directly into the war, because up there in the Gulf of Finland, it appears, folks, that that little Russian ship that was stopped yesterday is carrying something that's a big no-no, according to the sanctions registry. Finnish customs has stated that the cargo ship Fitberg, suspected in the damage to an Elisa telecom cable, was carrying structural steel subject to EU sectoral sanctions. The cargo is being detained, and a preliminary sanctions offense probe has begun. Basically, folks, they're carrying sanctioned Russian steel, and it just happened to be that they might have dragged their anchor along the bottom of the Gulf as well to sever a cable while they were carrying an illegal cargo. So the whole thing's coming together. Like, man, this like, if they actually were the ones who severed that cable, folks, the captain went, let's drag our nuts across their telecom cable and carry illegal cargo. Nothing can go wrong. It's, man, it's like, and everything did. Also, by the way, if some of y'all are like, who in the hell is using a giant round, basically circle of steel? This is a steel coil. It's very neat. Basically what it is it's a sheet of steel that's been rolled up into a coil to make it easier to transport. Because if you laid this thing out flat, it's unbelievably long. These things weigh a whole load. Like, each one of these coils can weigh somewhere around 20 to 15 tons. Usually that's a globally industrial sort of a standard weight. So these things are quite dangerous. It's actually wildly dangerous to transport these things at sea, because if you do not strap these little cables properly onto these coils to stop them from rolling, or if these securing fasteners break loose, these coils will actually roll around in the hold of the ship while it's underway at sea, which can then lead to the entire balance of the ship being thrown off and the ship capsizing due to a weight distribution issue. So these are quite dangerous to transport, actually. But I guess you could say that the Russians didn't get away with this little steal. Stop the steal. Get it?
Man, I'll tell you what, the Finns are going to finish them. They're going to take the whole business out with this run.
Man, I'll tell you, man, they always talk about that finishing mill in the steel industry, Matthew, but they never talk about the finish getting your steel. Like, they never talk about that part of it. That's a whole new deal.
I'll tell you what, the Finns have an affinity for steel. Like, they just love some extra steel. So it would be a shame if the Finns decided to seize this right here. It would be a damn shame.
Man, honestly, folks, I wouldn't use Russian structural steel, or any steel for that matter at all. I bet you the stuff is actually a pretty questionable quality, because I don't think Russian steel mills are what they used to be. Well, they weren't even good when they used to be something. So, with that, I hope that addresses that well about the Fitberg. And I gotta say, what a name, the Fitberg. You know what that sounds like, folks? That sounds like the Fitbit. Like that little fitness watch that used to be a thing back in the day. Like, what a way to name a ship. I'm the captain of the Fitbit. We get our steps in at sea. But anyways, moving on from that, it's time for us to get on into the Russian Federation. But before we get too far away from it, I do want to circle back really quickly to the Bella 1, which also is a part of the Russian story at this point, because apparently they called them on their cell phone. And so, Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
All right. So this one right here has actually already been addressed, believe it or not. We just addressed this one a moment ago.
I mean, heavens, I'd have to say I completely forgot, Matthew. I was just making sure that we covered it because it was still up there, and my mind reverted to, we want to cover that before we move on to the next one. But moving on to the next one.
Man, we already covered that one in depth right there. We'd already finished that one.
Man, damn. But anyways, moving on from that, and that slip up on error right there, because whoa, Jack, it's hard, it's hard to remember stuff sometimes. Back in the day. But moving on from that, folks, it's time for us to get on down into Samara and Novokubashevsk, because the Ukrainians did land a good hit here today. We were able to hear the confirmation today that at Novokubashevsk, 10 loud explosions were recorded, with a fire being visible at the refinery, and drones and drone interceptions were also reported around the area. We have a little bit of footage of that coming from Samara. Let's take a little gander. There's the fire at the Novokubashevsk refinery.
I love the dedication of the Russians to whip out their cell phone and record all this stuff. I admire those. Like, you can tell this guy just rolled out of bed. He said, "Oh, And then he whipped out his phone and just literally whipped it up, took a little video, put it down, and uploaded it.
Man, I gotta say, dude, like when Russians hear an explosion, folks, they go, "Oh, it's time to violate the operational security of my entire country. Quick, pull out the phone." It's like, wow, thank you, random Russians. Y'all help us out a lot with knowing what's happening. You see the little glow over the buildings.
Someone has the blue light special going on in their apartment over there on the right.
Man, that's like the Paul Revere one if by land, two if by sea deal.
I think that might be that plutonium experiment that guy did with a screwdriver in the hemisphere with the ball of plutonium, and it would turn blue and supercritical. I think they were doing another experiment in there.
Hey guys, look, I can hold the two halves of the devil's core apart with a screwdriver. Like, it's like, oh no, bro. Everyone,
the demon core, that's what it's called. You talking about the man? We both got it wrong. You said the devil's core. I said the screwdriver and plutonium trick. It's the demon core. That's what I was looking for.
Honestly, that radiation's emitting for a long time. I think they died instantly over there when they put the two halves together. It's like it's literally irradiating the entire building over there.
Also, I don't know what is going on in the background here, but they're like listening to the spirits of the damned or something like that in the background. There's like something weird in the background.
Let's listen to that again.
That's his long lost brother, Bilo, from the pits.
Man, that's the ghost of Russia past, or Russia future coming to show them the tombstone. Man, it's like, bro, they have the ghosts of Russia, Russian past, Russian present, and Russian future. Russian past is just Rinky Dink the Wise. Russian present is Putin, and then Russia future is the Grim Reaper, and he brings you to the grave, and he shows you your grave or something. Oh man, what a funny one. But yeah, they hit a fairly large refinery today at Novokubashevsk, and if y'all don't believe me, as in it is a large refinery, this is the refinery. It's literally about 2/3 of the size of the town of Novokubashevsk, and I wonder, folks, does Novokubashevsk look good or not? Oh, actually, that's...
It looks okay, but this building here, they're renovating it. Give them credit. They have scaffolding up.
Man, whenever I look at these street views of Russia, man, it literally looks like those scenes out of the movie 1984. Like strong and peaceful, and then like the night of hate and everything. Yeah, inside it looks just like that. Honestly, like this is the nicest place that we've seen in Russia in a minute, folks. But about to ruin the illusion. We're gonna go 3 blocks over, and we're gonna go out into the suburbs. Oh, oh God!
That still isn't too bad for Russia. This is still not that bad, but it's starting to get a little shabby.
It's getting rough, man. Like what is these? What did these say? Sparka. Man, bro, someone's saying, "Don't touch the electrical pole; you'll get electrocuted." It said Sparka on it.
Midnight services. Call number. Don't call back.
Huh. Look. This one says, "Angel if work overtime, devil if ask salary."
Now that's something there that I think is starting to take hold in the United States.
Man, honestly, kind of sad. Let's. We can't. They Fent pose?
I think he's just waiting around. He's probably just waiting for the bus.
Oh well, he might be waiting for a little hit of that Fent. But anyways, oh my God, oh man, I gotta be honest with y'all, folks. This is what Russia looks like everywhere. It's really bad. It's terrible looking, really. But anyways, folks, enough of that. The refinery, that's the major part of the news, was obliterated, so it'll mostly be out of action for a pretty long time. Moving on out of Novokubashevsk and on up into Moscow, we do have a couple of Russian government news pieces to work off of. Ham and Cheddar Man is apparently on death's doorstep. This is Ham and Cheddar Man. We call him that because he looks like he eats ham and cheddar sandwiches, which we didn't really think of when I first said that on air years ago. But this guy is Islamic, actually, so he's probably not eating a ham and cheddar sandwich. but we're still calling him that. Anyways, Ramzan Kadyrov, the leader of Chechnya, was admitted to a Moscow hospital on Christmas Eve. His present condition is not known, but reports suggest he underwent resuscitation and just managed to survive. So we think that he went for a swim near Turkey again or something, or Egypt, wherever the hell he almost drowned, and he had to be resuscitated there. Or he tried to get on that bicycle and look like an idiot again, and that led him to have to be resuscitated. We don't really know, but he is in absolutely bad condition one way or the other. So folks, you might have heard Don for the last time, Don, the last time he made the public address, Don. Also, by the way, folks, I don't really have a lot of sympathy for this guy. This guy literally runs a band of war criminals, basically, inside of Ukraine. So that's why I'm making a whole load of fun of this guy, because it's not like he's some guy to say anything good about. That would be like going, oh no, Hitler's dying. It's like, who in the world would say that? It's like, yay, he's dying. It's like, that might be a good thing for folks. It's a good thing for a lot of Ukrainians that were butchered at the hands of the Akhmat, which are his men that were under his direct command. But outside of that, a lot of people are wondering what's going to happen to the ham and cheddar man. Did he finally choke on his last ham and cheddar sandwich, or do people think that he might have one final ham and cheddar sandwich to gulp down before he finally goes to the grave? And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right. So Ramzan Kadyrov, it seems like every time he's in the news these days, it's always about him almost kicking the bucket, like every single time. He almost drowned allegedly in Turkey. I think there was also a situation with a shark as well. I think like in the water. It's hard to keep the story straight. This guy has been cheating death for a minute. And now apparently he just almost died on the spot in Moscow too. So he's always about to die. Like this guy right here is somehow hanging on. He's hanging on for dear life. This guy doesn't want to see what's waiting for him after he's gone. He doesn't want to see what's happening for that. He probably knows what's waiting for him. So he's hanging on for dear life, and he's trying to keep the bucket from getting kicked. But right now, though, what do you think? 65% said he'll likely pass away, while 16% said it's too early to tell, and 12% said he'll be saved and he will still live. So the story right now is he went to the hospital and had to be resuscitated. That's never a good thing when you hear somebody getting resuscitated in critical care. So this guy here, I'll be honest with you, I mean, people have been saying he's going to die for like the last 2 years, and it sounds like it was legitimate because he's basically fighting a war with his liver. He's fighting his body at this point. So I'm not really sure how this guy's even hanging on, and he keeps seeing Putin over and over talking about something, and he just keeps cheating death. So I'm going to say it's too early to tell. It seems like this devil here is simply just going to keep hanging on. But Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta be honest with y'all, folks. I think the guy is actually gonna hang on for a little bit longer. This guy is always in the hospital on like the very edge of death. Like I actually hear folks that when he walks in the government meetings, he goes, "Hello, everyone. I'm Ramzan Kadyrov, and welcome to Jackass." Beep, and then he like flatlines. Everyone's like, "Oh, get him to the hospital!" Like there's something along those lines. This guy is literally in the hospital basically every other month. So I think he'll probably make it through again, and we'll probably see some stupid video of him on a bicycle in a basement or something again. To prove that he's alive. So, you know.
I don't know how this guy keeps hanging on, though. I mean, it's insane how many, death situations he's escaped. It's like, I mean, damn, this guy's like a feline cat. This guy's like got 10 lives.
Man, like he's running out of them though. I mean, he's like running out of one every other month. So, he's getting on down there, folks. But I do have to say this guy is apparently quite resilient. Like he's almost down and out every other month, but then he somehow comes back for another round and trying to survive. So,
how
anyway.
old is he? Let's see here. Kadyrov age. Let's see. This guy must be pretty old.
40s probably.
So this guy, how come they're making it so hard to find his age? Let's see here. 49 years old. That is crazy work right there. I know 80-year-olds that are in better shape than him, and he's only 49. So he must be like drinking vodka or something. Like I don't know the specifics, but he must be doing something to exacerbate his medical issues, because for him to be having these type of problems here at 49 years old, that's kind of wild. So this guy's been kicking the bucket, almost about to kick the bucket, and he's barely even 50.
Man, that guy, he's not running good odds. Like, I'll tell you that. Moving on out of that Kadyrov news, though, and into the rest of our Russian government news, we were able to hear the Russians apparently corrected the CIA today, and told them that data extracted from Ukrainian drones shot down over the Novgorod region on December 29th shows a facility of the Russian president's residence was its target. Clearly, Ukrainian drones just have it pre-programmed in them for some reason, although they're operated by an actual pilot where they're going. Why the hell would that even be? And the data will be passed to the U.S. via established channels. Also, another thing that I gotta say is that, yeah, Ukrainian drones fly over the Novgorod region a good deal, but that doesn't mean that they're attacking Putin's house. You know? Like, the Ukrainian drones have flown over the Novgorod region, which is right here. Well, actually, it's right here, to get to the port of Ust-Luga to hit it, and also up here to the port of Primorsk and hit that as well. We've even seen drones hit St. Petersburg and other places like Pskov. So, why in the world are they acting, oh, look, it flew over Novgorod, It's like, if it wasn't attacking his place, and there's no video and picture evidence of that, and the CIA can't even confirm that happened, it didn't happen. It never happened. The Russians are apparently going to correct the CIA, though, and tell them, look, here is this fabricated evidence that we clearly made up. We're going to give this to you in the hopes you believe us, because clearly we have your best interests in heart.
What if they send the video, that fake AI video, and say, "Here's the data file that you haven't seen"? I would lose my shit if they send them that AI video. Let's get that. Let's show the people that one more time? By the way, let's see. Let's see here. Russian drone. Say what?
I'd have to go get the last map actually and go find it there.
Let's see here. I'm trying to go grab it real quick. But the people were asking to see it earlier, so I'm gonna go grab it if I can try to get it. I'll let you know though when I have it.
Oh, yes. But I see some people saying this is absolutely ridiculous. It really is, folks. This is absolutely ridiculous. Like, why in the world? I gotta say this, folks. Why in the world would a Ukrainian drone, because we know that they're piloted by actual operators, why in the world would they find the reason in Ukraine to go, while this drone is piloted by an operator, so clearly he's going to be operating it, and the only person who needs to know where this drone needs to go is that pilot. Why in the world would they then pre-program a data chip into a Ukrainian drone, basically like an Easter egg or a birthday present for the Russians, to tell them where the drone was trying to go? That makes no sense. Like, there has never been, like, the Russians have never said that Ukrainian drones have that data in them at any point in the war until right now when they need to try and back up a completely fabricated story.
Yeah, go check the likes tab, by the way. Show the people the fake AI video that Russia was trying to report. Take a look at this, folks. This was the video we showed yesterday, just one more time. Yep. That was a hit, all right. Man, this right here is the definitive proof. The house had to get hit.
Man, oh my God, right in the SUV driving straight through the stone fountain, and then the pyrotechnics looking thing that happened in front of the main door. I mean, it really just seals the deal, folks. I mean, look at that back there. Literally like a little pyrotechnic show.
Had the little mosquito sound for the drone flying by. I mean, this was the most stupid thing ever. Also, what's even crazier than that, why did the Russians have to send it on a secure channel to the United States? If they were posting videos, and how come they can't just publish the new evidence to the public? Why does this one have to be secret?
Because they have to make sure that nobody can call the farce too well. It just has to be a handful of people, so it might take a little longer. That's why. Like, it's all BS. But moving on out of the Russian Federation, and, well, we have one more thing to cover. The Russians have some brand new T-90Ms. That was reported on Russia 24 today. And I just want to show you all the little clip, because look at this, folks. Snow-covered T-90Ms. They claim they're straight out of the factory. Now, I want to show you all this because the Russians are priding themselves on this brand new batch of T-90Ms that, in their words, are going to cause hell for the Ukrainians, although these have been blown up quite easily. So the Russian engine that's pushing these cars is right behind the reporter right here. You can see it right there. So we have one T-90M behind his shoulder and one right here on the left side of the frame. So I wonder, folks, in this new batch of T-90Ms that's going to turn the tide of the war, how many of them did they make? So 1, 2, we're on 2, and Four T90Ms, folks. Four T90Ms are going to turn this whole war around. Believe me, folks. We got to have this guy freezing his balls off out in Tula right now to show y'all four T90Ms on some railway flat cars. Oh, look at them go. Now they're going to give us a little demo of the T90Ms. These things have been obliterated in Ukraine so many times that the first time it was blown up, I believe it was in the fall of 2022 near Kharkiv. It was a pretty big deal because everyone was like, oh, wow, we just blew up the most advanced tank Russia actually has on the battlefield. I think at this point about 170 of these have been photographically confirmed to have been destroyed. So they don't even really pose a threat to the Ukrainians. They're literally blown up like any other tank.
And also, what happened to the efficacy of those hedgehog tanks they were creating? You know, the ones with all like the rebar welded onto it, like a hedgehog.
Oh, Vadim, don't bring them up. Like, wait a minute. Now they're going to show us an infographic of a T-72B3 to explain the T-90M. Totally different variant, by the way, of the T-72 hull.
Their budget's probably been blown for animation, so they had to recycle one probably.
No way. No way. Okay, folks, they're trying to kid us all into thinking that stupid casket that they put on the side of the tank is a trophy system. Because it just showed right here on this infographic, look at this. It fires off a Lego brick at the FPV drone that then explodes. Oh my god.
There was nothing for it to even come out of. Is that like a storage like a pod on the side? That's not like a trophy thing.
Yeah, apparently they're trying to make a trophy thing because this isn't a normal add-on. Usually they have like these satchel packs that hold the additional applique armor that they put on the side of a T-72B3. So apparently they made this casket-like contraption here. Very, very, a lot of foreshadowing involved there. To try and protect the tanks with some form of a trophy system. Only problem is, folks, there is no trophy system sensor on this tank, so this thing wouldn't work unless if it's attached to a sensor, and then all of that is wired into the actual hardware of the tank. So this is fiction.
And also, by the way, I see people saying, why is it carrying a log? That was a thing they just introduced, by the way. They bring that log along with them, so that way when the Russian tank crews act up, they put that log into the ground like a post, like a power line type deal, and they tie the Russian soldier to it, and they leave him behind.
I see.
Not really, by the way. It's called a battle log. That's like a Russian tradition.
So to explain to y'all what the log really is for, it's so that way if they get bogged down in the mud, the theory is that they take that log and they try and shove it under the front or the back of the tracks, and then that gives the tank a little bit of extra traction. That's what the battle logs are for on the tanks. In reality, these never work, so they're basically for aesthetic. It's just a tradition that the Russians have at this point. But look, there goes
I will say it is something that became kind of like legendary. Like if you ever play any type of video game, they always modeled the Russian battle log on the back of these Russian tanks. So yeah, I think it's just for like morale. If you can believe it or not, it's for morale.
Probably so. Look, the classical log. They actually have been man, in Russia, I heard that they started calling these things the Yule logs because usually they catch on fire and burn often these days because the tanks that they're on blow up. But here they are showing the 4 T90Ms again, and then they're showing this guy. He's like, honestly, I haven't even gone to war yet because I'm still alive. So, I'm hoping to take one of these bad boys for a spin.
He said, I really wanted to take the thing out for a little bit of a test drive.
He's like, it is what it... Oh, look, now we're in the factory. Oh, look at the tank turret rotate. Oh, God. Not a lot of tank turrets rotate, folks. Remember, a lot of them can't. Especially those wicked, wayward ways of the West ones, those immoral Western turrets, they can't spin.
Wait, there was a storage pod. He was literally putting crap into it.
I think
that's the same thing that's on the side.
I think it might be like that casket they just showed. He's putting a tarp in there. And then this guy appears to have been just beat up by the FSB. He's got like this crack on the side of his head here. He's like, they came by and told me that the factory's numbers have never been better. I'm going to believe them or else they'll beat me again. Meanwhile, they're...
You shouldn't have turned on me. I'm Scarface.
No, you really disappoint me. I'm going to give you an offer you can't refuse.
Oh, look, they're getting a little Christmas present in the tank. And then they got the kids here. They're drawing the tank. Oh, look, they're drawing, don't get the Ukrainians, bomb another innocent child. I think it's a duty of our Russian citizenry to do this. They have to show the chicks, folks, by the way. They get, like, conventionally attractive chicks to show in these clips, so that way people from international audiences go, oh, look at Russia. That's literally what they do it for. So if you're about to go, ooh la la, it's literally like a strategic thing they do on Russian state television and propaganda. That's also what the Israelis do.
The Russians are like, throw a woman in there, and that'll like spice up the propaganda. They're expecting all the Western people to go, oh gosh, look. It's like who's this really working on? It's like, come on, man.
You know, it's funny, man, but the Israelis do that well with the IDF. Like, they will get, like, they literally get women, like basically, like, model or supermodel-looking women, and they'll pay them a good bit to pretty much just come to the IDF and wear a uniform for a photo shoot, or to basically serve in the IDF in, like, a public relations unit to try and build up rapport with the public. They do that as well. But
I'm just saying, but she looks kind of normal to me. I mean, she's, no offense or anything like that, like, not trying to judge on looks, but, you know, it seems pretty normal.
And then we can see them here going over a first aid kit. They'll definitely need that. They're really thinking ahead on that one there.
You see, this is something here that the Russians haven't really seen before. This is brand new. This is called a tourniquet. This is called, I think that actually looked like an Israeli bandage. Not from the company from Israel, but like the design of it and stuff like that they had in that pack.
Wow, man. The propaganda goes hard. Now you see them talking some more. You see, we do all this because we know they're going to die, and the benefits are good. Chocolate cakes and water park tickets. What the hell old parchment is that? We the people of the United States ass look a piece of paper right there. It's like, when you're in the middle of the war, yeah, you want to whip open the Declaration of Independence to figure out how the fuel nozzle works. That's really going to be beneficial.
Yeah, okay, look at it. Close it on up. Why wouldn't they close it up on camera?
Oh man, look, they're sealing them in. Like, they're sealing them in on their fate, bro. Like, literally screwing the hatches shut. Oh, nice. And off it goes. Man, they make a whole production about these T-90Ms for them to get blown up literally within like 3 days of showing up in Ukraine. But moving on out of that and on into Ukraine, it's time for us to actually get on into the frontline news. Also, I do have to point out that the Novokubashevsk attack was a part of a larger Ukrainian drone attack that was conducted over the course of the night, which you can see all the flight paths of those drones in that infographic. Moving us on into the Sumy Oblast, we were able to see a little GBU-62 doing its work. Russian was lucky to film this and not be the recipient of it. Oh, excuse me. Oh, here comes the bomb. Oh, GBU-62. Those things work very well.
That worked damn good. It went pitch black and dark after that. I couldn't see anything. It's like lights out.
I can't see! Bro, it's literally like here on New Year's Eve. Like a rock in the windows and everything. But moving on from that, we also were able to see that the Russian Volunteer Corps commander is freaking alive. The
Whoa.
Ukrainians scammed the Russians. Like,
No way. Look at that. Denis Kapustin is still alive. That's crazy. I actually said on the air like 2 or 3 nights ago because it was reported that this guy had been killed on the front lines. But actually, he's alive. Look at that. That's a crazy fast one they pulled there.
So, folks, you want to know what's funny? The Ukrainians pulled an entire scam. Apparently, the hitmen were working with the Ukrainians, and the Russians put out a $500,000 hit with these Ukrainian hitmen to go and kill the Russian Volunteer Corps commander, Denis Kapustin. They were able to convince the Russians, along with the Ukrainian Ministry of Intelligence, that they had actually successfully whacked Denis Kapustin and killed him, and the Russians paid out the $500,000 to the hitmen that the entire time, from what we know, were operating with the Ukrainian GRU. So then after they got the $500,000, they came out today and confirmed he's alive, and they literally just scammed the Russians out of $500,000.
Man, honestly, Zelensky said, thank you so much for your donation, Russians. We appreciate the $500,000 donation. Honestly, that's crazy right there. That is insane that they pulled that off. Honestly, good on Ukraine. That was a good one.
Dude, honestly, $500,000 in the big picture, folks, is like basically nothing in the military sense. But that $500,000 is worth hundreds of millions in the embarrassment that this is showing the Russian FSB to be. The Russian FSB went, you know what?
We'll try and subcontract. Let's just call up some guys in Ukraine and see if we can get the dude killed. We'll give you $500,000 to shoot him.
And they're literally talking to the guys right under Budanov.
Really? 500,000, you say? We'll do it.
And then they go and have the guy announce that he's dead, and they put him in hiding for a couple of days. And then they're like, yeah, we got him. He's dead. And then the FSB goes, here's your $500,000. And then they go, thank you. And I'm John Quinones. And you're on. What would you do? And the Russians are like, "Oh no!" We've been
man. You know, the Russians were seething after those because they don't have a lot of $500,000, amounts of money just laying around. So that's a lot of money they just paid out right there. And it turns out it was a donation straight to the Ukrainian armed forces.
Man, what an amazing feat. And Budanov and the Commander Kapustin were on a call today, along with the alleged hitman up there in the top right. All in the same call after they scammed the Russians. Really quite an impressive feat. I gotta say, folks, Ukraine has pulled a lot of crazy hijinks over the course of this war in a million different ways. This war will be remembered just for the absolute shenanigans that Ukraine has pulled off on the Russians and gotten away with over 100 times at this point. This one's the newest one yet. But moving on from that, we also were able to see that the Ukrainians were building some positions in that winter snow. I actually didn't know that sometimes they went at it with picks. Usually they use like a trench digging machine to dig the actual trench, but apparently they're adding an addition to the living room, so they are doing that with a pick, actually. But moving on from that...
Also, by the way, just to make it clear, that guy you pointed to in the top right, I don't think that's the alleged hitman, by the way, just to make that perfectly clear.
Oh, I thought he was.
Yeah, just to make that clear, that guy that was showing the image back there, I don't think that's the guy. I think that's somebody working with the Ukrainian intelligence.
Oh, well, moving on from that, we did see some more Russians on horseback. Take a look at that. Look at them. Cavalry is becoming incredibly common on the Russian side. And they had to add a TikTok filter to it as well to make it a little bit better. But moving on into our Russian casualty report, we also were able to see that, sadly, there were no Bobcats today. But Miss Decent Keeper of the Record did state that 769 drones shot down is the second highest daily loss of the wire, starting off the New Year's in a great way. Troop losses for the 7-day average is over 1,100 a day, and most categories are above average. And over the past 24 hours, we were able to confirm that the New Year started off poorly for the Russians. They've lost 1,060 troops, wounded and killed, along with 4 APCs, 171 supply trucks, 7 main battle tanks, 36 artillery pieces, 769 drones, and 1 MLRS. Overall, this was a very good day in basically every category, and it's looking quite splendid indeed. Moving on from that and on out of that little bit of news, we're going to be moving on down into the Seversk area, where we were able to see a Russian on a bike running over a mine. Wow. Now, to tell you all, folks, I just think that guy might have gotten some flight miles right there, possibly. But once again, reminding you all, if you're on the battlefield, probably not best to drive a dirt bike into a minefield. Bad things might happen. Well, moving on from Seversk and lessons learned, it's time for us to get on down towards Pokrovsk, where we also were able to see the Ukrainian SBU taking down some FPV drones. Oh, they got that music playing. Oh, no, man, he was quick. Music. I was like, damn. Oh, look, they have Volodymyr Sololoviv down at the bottom of the screen. It's good to see him here.
Oh, dang. They didn't have to let him have a cameo. That was generous.
Oh, and they're about to get this drone. Let's see, he's adjusting his optics there. Is this guy handy with a rifle? And the answer's yes.
Oh, wow. He is handy with it. Look at that. It went down just like a movie scene.
And they were back on the move. You can see the anti-drone nets dashed to pieces along this whole roadway. We see them moving on through, and that's the end of the clip, but quite an impressive one, I'll admit. Moving on from that and down into the area behind the lines near Pokrovsk, we also saw a Tor M2 knocked out by the 412th Brigade.
It's a top.
You know, Matthew, I heard that when the Russians, they want to take a perusing at the Tors, they go Tor browsing.
That could be true. Dark weapon.
Man. Operation Spider Weapon.
They're like, let's get on here and see if the Silk Road is still active.
Oh, damn it. It's not.
Oh, it's gone. Whoops.
Oh, look, they got a little radar for an S-350. Well, what do you know? What a great day around there, by the way. Moving on up into Pokrovsk, we also saw that the Ukrainians actually launched a fireworks show off in Pokrovsk on New Year's Eve. Now tell me the Ukrainians aren't goated. They're like taking it with stride so well, they're literally having a fireworks show on the active front in Pokrovsk.
That's impressive right there. I like to see it. They could have just used, like, you know, some good old-fashioned gunfire for their celebration, but they brought in the real deal, the fireworks.
Well, if they did that, Matthew, that was what we would call Syria, and Ukraine is not Syria. So they use real fireworks for the Christmas Eve celebrations.
I tell you, look at this. They got a better fireworks show than they have here in America. These people right here are spending some bucks on fireworks.
I mean, honestly, literally in the middle of the city. I mean, that's actually pretty wild, but that's the end of that clip. Pretty crazy to see there, without a doubt. Moving us on down the front and on into the area of the town of Kamyanske and Stepnohirsk, we also saw that the Ukrainians were dropping some mines on those Russians. Mind the gap. Always have to check if there's music, folks. And they also have to try
I think that's what they're going to do. I think that's what they're going to do eventually. They're going to mine the gap. The Suwalki, they're going to probably do that.
You know, they actually are working on that right now. You're very ahead of the game, sir. Very ahead of the game. Oh, there was an explosion right there. Smoke billowing out into the streets as the Ukrainians continue to lay down that fire.
What kind of weapon is this? Is that a Scar or a Bren?
That would be... It's highly likely a CZ Bren in tan, but it could be a Scar.
That is interesting. It kind of has the same silhouette.
The Brens do look a lot like the Scar, but I would have to see more of it to be able to tell for sure. We see them continuing to hit those Russians with basically everything they have. They just took down that whole part of the building right there with an anti-tank mine. And we see them getting ready to chuck another one in. They said, Happy New Year's. Oh, look, they're getting the New Year's presents ready. Oh, well, brought down the roof. The Ukrainians, they know how to party.
They laid on the poundage.
Oh, did y'all see that horror movie scene right there where they shine the flashlight right into the middle of that office chair? That's usually when, like, Pennywise shows up or something, and they start singing that song, a smile is something special, a ribbon is something red. But anyways, moving on from that.
And then if Pennywise doesn't do them in, then they call in Dollar-Wise.
Do you have Prince Albert in a can? You do? Well, you let him let the poor guy out. But anyways, moving on from that. Oh, man. Honestly, man, folks, I haven't watched anything of it or Pennywise stuff. I just know the memes. So, like, I'm giving you all the references, but I really don't even know what I'm referencing, to be entirely honest. I got to get around to watching that, though. I've heard it's good.
Who's the one shining the flashlight down this hole?
I don't know him personally, but I'm sure someone else does. No, these are the Ukrainians.
They really are getting wild with that.
They really are, man. Flashlights are something crazy. I got to be careful there. But moving on from that and on up into Kyiv, it's time for us to get to the speech from the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, here on this very day of the war, day 1408. And luckily, folks, this one doesn't have music, so we can actually play it. So how are all
they must have doing? They must have some good DDoS protection on this website, because it takes always a minute to load, like every single time.
I got to say, folks, this white screen here. Oh, look at that. Well, it's time for us to get on into it. Looks like Zelensky.
Hey, there's our video being recommended right there. Look at that. You saw that anniversary video. It's the first one being recommended. That's nice.
Man, you know it. You always know it. You know it, folks. You're here on I think the biggest show, one of the biggest shows on YouTube right now. So without further ado, folks, here is the speech. Speech!
Шановні українці, українки, ще раз з Новим роком усіх. Починаємо цей рік, починаємо дипломатію, продовжуємо розмову з нашими партнерами. Це найголовніше, щоб підтримка для нас, для України була. І була достатня. Саме на цьому все тримається, передусім воїни на передовій, всі наші захисники і захисниці, наша промисловість, наше виробництво зброї. Кожен, хто нам допомагає, вся наша міжнародна підтримка. ППО треба шукати кожен день, ракети для ППО Україні потрібні щодня. І так само фінанси на зброю, на дрони для нашої армії, НРК, техніку, все необхідно. Все максимально активно, так само заради того, щоб перемовини рухались, в усіх аспектах рухались, на кожному треку. І сьогодні Рустем Умєров на зустрічах в Туреччині. Міністр закордонних справ Туреччини, далі розвідка, і ми дуже стараємось у новому році відновити обміни. Саме це ключова тема в розмові з Туреччиною. Нам потрібне це сприяння, щоб повертати наших українців додому з російського полону. В минулому році обміни були активними, під кінець року, на жаль, загальмували, треба тепер відновити. Також Рустем кожного дня на зв'язку з американською командою та нашими партнерами в Європі. Вчора, сьогодні ми готуємо формат, ми готуємо важливі зустрічі. 3 січня – зустріч радників з питань національної безпеки в Україні. Це перша така зустріч в Україні щодо миру. Європейські представники, плюс ми очікуємо американську команду онлайн. І 15 країн підтвердили, плюс представники європейських структур і НАТО. Далі, 5 січня буде зустріч військових, начальники генеральних штабів зустрінуться. Головне – це гарантії безпеки для України. Політично майже все готово і важливо опрацювати кожну деталь, як гарантії працюватимуть в небі, на землі, на морі. Якщо нам вдасться закінчити війну. А саме це ключова мета для всіх нормальних людей. 6 січня – зустріч на рівні лідерів європейських країн, лідери, коаліція охочих. Ми готуємо зараз, щоб зустріч була продуктивною, і щоб підтримки стало більше, і щоб по гарантіях і по мирній угоді політичної впевненості стало більше. Дякуємо всім, хто нам допомагає. Зараз я говорив з президентом Кіпру. Перший дзвінок року. Саме з 1 січня починається головування Кіпру в Євросоюзі. Для нас важливо, щоб Україна була в пріоритетах кіпрського головування на півроку. Членство України в Євросоюзі – це так само гарантії безпеки. На членство теж ми працюємо. Поінформував про нашу розмову з Америкою, про ситуацію в дипломатії. Дякую Кіпру за підтримку. Дякую, пане президенте Нікосе, за всі важливі слова про українців, про Україну, про нашу силу. Звісно, дякую кожному, хто сьогодні від ночі, від ранку працює на відновлення після російських ударів. Навіть в новорічну ніч росіяни не стримались. Ось такі вони. Але ми захищаємось та відновлюємо. Такі українці. А завтра буде важливий день внутрішньої політики для України. Слава Україні!
Героям слава.
And with that, folks, that's the end of the news from the past 24 hours from around the world. And it's time for us to move on to the second segment of the stream, where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And boy, howdy, folks, is it going to be an absolute blast, because we have a great deal of excitement ahead. Anything and everything can be talked about in this segment, folks, from the largest Costco in the world to what kind of Costco chicken we eat, to what kind of Costco products do we consume, to what kind of, by and large, sorts of products we consider to be the best in the world. We can literally talk about anything and everything, from Costco to Costco and from Costco to Costco. And, of course, we're going to be making sure to get on into that question segment and talk about all of those amazing topics that I just mentioned. But I have to remind everyone, folks, of a couple of rules of this channel. For one, we do not discuss religion, we do not discuss politics, we do not discuss climate change, or whether the A-10 is relevant in modern warfare, and we also, folks, do not allow for advertising of other YouTube channels in our live chat. I have seen that happen a couple of times tonight, and some folks have had to be unfortunately banned because apparently they don't get the memo, but generally it's incredibly rude, folks, for people to advertise other folks' channels while watching someone else's. So, you know, I would have to say this to folks, like, don't pop into someone else's live stream on the live chat and, like, promote or advertise our channel, because that's usually, like, that could actually end up getting us in beefs with other folks, and, you know, we don't have any issues with most anyone on YouTube, and we don't really want to, and also we don't really like it for people to come in here and do that, because why are you here if you like that other show so much? You know, that's honestly my question. But anyways, with that, it's time for us, folks, to get on into all of them questions. And boy, howdy, folks, do we have a lot of them, and do we have very little? Actually, we have a good amount of time, folks. We actually ended the news segment tonight at a fairly reasonable time. It wasn't extremely long, and I'm usually happy with that because I like to have a good balance. But, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so we are fairly on time and fairly reasonable, and I hope we address that fairly well. But it's now
Oh
time
yeah.
to jump into our first super chat of our last super chat segment, and then get to our live chats and our Morse code decoders, and we're going to get to all of that and more. And also, if there is any breaking news that happens to break out, we will cover that as well during this segment. But in the meantime, though, let's jump into that super chat, which goes to ARP Bob, and ARP puts in a massive $100 support, and thank you very much, ARP, for that very generous support. And we do appreciate
Hey!
that very much. He said the steel rollers are 40 tons each, and Slava Ukraine, and long live the Leaf Spring Army.
And thank you so much for the support, ARP Bob. And let's go steel coil weight. Because actually, I always heard that they were lighter than that. Let's see. So, oh, they vary a whole load actually. They can range anywhere from 5 to 30 tons. So the heaviest of them can get up to 60,000 pounds, or some of them can even get up to 40 tons. That's more than the weight of an actual main battle tank in Russia. A main battle tank in Russia weighs 35 tons. So some of your largest industrial steel coils can weigh more than a T-72B3 or a T-90M. That's actually pretty crazy, folks. That's really crazy to think about right there. And I got to thank you massively for the support, ARP Bob, and sharing that with us. And I got to say that steel making is something that's very interesting to me. It's near and dear to my heart because I find the process of making steel to be incredibly fascinating. There's so many different ways to make steel. There's the electric arc furnace, there's the Bessemer process, there's the BOP process, which is the basic oxygen process. There's so many different ways to make steel, and it's changed basically from basically era to era. Each era had its own way of making steel. And I believe in the modern day, the BOP process, or the basic oxygen process, I think is the most commonly used steel making form that there is. The blast furnaces of old generally are going out of business because they're incredibly expensive to maintain, and also it requires a constant demand. They can't really be turned on and off. Electric arc furnaces are fairly common, and the BOP process, the basic oxygen process, is also wildly common. I think it's the most common form of steel making these days. With that, I thank you so much for the support, ARP Bob, and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. So I got to thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. So a humongous thanks to you so much once again, and with that, we're on to the next one.
Also, by the way, I'm not sure if y'all heard this about Iran today, but speaking of the major economic issues that Iran is having, I think we forgot to mention this. Iran is actually offering to sell advanced weaponry out of their country in exchange for a cryptocurrency. So that's the way they're trying to basically get money now, is by trying to make all their sales in crypto. So that's a bit of a crazy thing right there. So apparently, if you want to buy something from Iran as a foreign government, like let's say, I'm not really honestly sure who wants to buy anything from Iran except for Russia. But also, by the way, I'm not sure how it's going to work. For example, if their government gets toppled, and then the Russians are not pretty much relying on Iran at all for any type of weaponry. I know they've licensed, I think they've licensed a Shahed to Russia to build that within the Russian borders. But outside of that, though, apparently Russia will not be able to rely on Iran anymore for any type of weaponry. So I'm not really sure who Iran is expecting to sell anything to even get crypto.
We sell weapons of mass destruction and support terrorist organizations, but we would only accept Bitcoin.
It's like, bro, that sounds so stupid. Like, man, the Islamic Republic of Iran is probably the stupidest government around when you think about it, man. It's like they're running out of water, and their primary concern is accepting Bitcoin for weapons purchases. It's like,
Yeah, and it's like, is there not some way for the United States to track that wallet? Like, Iran must be accepting the payments in some type of crypto wallet. So it seems like we should be able to track that and maybe try to claw back that crypto that they're getting from foreign governments or something. Because obviously, Iran can't go around selling weapons to people. That's something that the U.S. would put a stop to if they could. So it seems like they could try to track it.
you know, I've never heard, folks, of imagine the conversation that was had, folks, in the Iranian government for that to be announced. My brothers in Islam, to advance our Islamic revolution, we must accept Bitcoin. It's like, well, what? It's like, what do they mean? Like, that sounds so stupid. Like, their glorious Islamic revolution is going to thrive off of the Bitcoin. Like, or something else, I guess, the Dogecoin, maybe. It's like, what are the, like, I don't even understand. And also, crypto means basically any cryptocurrency. So it's like, would they accept Dogecoin?
No, they're probably selective about what crypto they want. They probably want the most valuable ones, I would imagine. But it's just crazy though. It's like what country is able to pay Iran in crypto? It's like, are you telling me that countries are, not using Swift? Is Iran even connected to Swift anymore?
I don't think they've been connected to Swift for a while. I think.
Okay, yeah. So I would imagine they're probably not, but I guess crypto is the only way that they can really do exchanges of money, actually. So that's probably their only means of currency.
I'm getting a crack out of this. The Houthis are like, we'll take 100 more anti-ship missiles, and the Iranians are like, oh yes, and the payment, Hakatua coin.
That's a low point for a country. I tell you what, you don't accept Haktua.
Really look through the crypto wallet. They're like, we got a nickel, a piece of lint, a paperclip, and about 5,000 Haktua coins. Oh my god. Man, and they're going to get the Islamic Revolution ahead with the Haktua coin. I'll tell you all that,
What
folks.
good and what good is crypto really for, to be perfectly honest? Like, I get the fact that some people will swear by it. They're like, oh, it's a great investment. And fair enough. Like, there are people that make money off of crypto out there, but it allows so much stuff like this. Like, for example, North Korea is heavy into that too. They do the exact same thing that Iran's doing with crypto. They use it for illicit operations, and Iran's doing the same thing. So it's kind of like AI. It's like, yes, it has some positive purposes to it, but there's also a massive iceberg like under the surface of really bad things that can be used for, and there's no way to stop that. Like, it's just a free for all at that point, and the whole point of crypto is for it to be secret. You really can't track it that well, and it's decentralized, so it literally facilitates things like this.
Yeah, honestly, I'll be honest with you, Matthew. This is about as stupid as taking like NFTs as payment for weapons. Like, it's like, are they going to just start like, will they accept payment in that shitty like modern art, where people just throw paint on a canvas? It's like, will they accept payment in that as well? It's like crypto folks like isn't even backed by good faith. Like, it's just backed on whatever, like. Well, I mean, it basically is backed on good faith, but it's backed on extremely precarious good faith. It's not even backed by a nation. It's just backed by the will of the public. That's why you can see Bitcoin take a dive of like $5,000 in a day sometimes, is because someone, like, the value starts dropping a little bit, and then for some reason there's just a group panic that happens and people start dumping Bitcoins, and then it just starts losing loads of its value. It's like, I don't even understand that. And also, it's like, what if they accept the payment in Bitcoin today, and then Bitcoin is only worth half of the value of what it was tomorrow? It's like, then they've been pretty much robbed at that point,
And also, what are they going to spend the Bitcoin on, or whatever cryptocurrency they're using? Because we don't know which one they're using. But it's like they're going to accept crypto and then use it to do what? It's like, oh, they're going to go buy snacks with it. It's like, what are they going to, like? They can't even do that. Like, it's like they're just going to hold it into a wallet and do nothing with it.
Bro, Kamini's going to get himself some new shades, a Lambo, and like a couple other things. He's going to be out in front of the palace in Tehran going, "What color is your Bugatti?" Like, man. Oh man, I'm telling you, man.
I don't get it. I just don't understand.
I don't understand it. I don't get it at all. But anyways, folks, with that, I hope we were able to break that news to y'all, even in the midst of what's the question segment. Honestly, that's hilarious. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Marion Deemert, who puts in a $30 support. And thank you very much, Marion, as well, for that support. And Marion said, Happy New Year and Slava Ukraine.
And Happy New Year to you. And a big Slava Ukraine to you. We're happy to have you here with us in the brand new year, and we hope that you continue to enjoy this show as we once again trudge along forward into a brand new year. It's really crazy to think that 2024 kind of felt like it just started yesterday. Really, every year feels like it just started yesterday because we're always so busy, folks, and it's so weird. It's truly bizarre when we get around to a brand new year, and I'm like, it's 2026 now. Another entire year has passed, and we've basically been around for 4 years almost now. Like in about let's see here, it'll be about a month and a half. The news coverage phase of this channel will be 4 years old. The channel itself will be about 4.5 years old at that point, actually. So that's just really weird to think about. Really, really weird. We've literally had a career of news coverage at this point on YouTube, a 4-year long career. Many channels have risen and fallen in that time, and we're still here covering the news, and a lot of y'all are still here with us, and we're very appreciative of that, and we thank y'all greatly. And so with that, we're big thanks to you so much once again, and we're on to the next one.
And moving on to our next super chat. This one goes to O'Brien, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, O'Brien, for that support as well. He said, Happy New Year, all from Copenhagen. And also, Brian, I hope you are recovering from those drone incursions that you were having a short while ago. Since you are in Copenhagen, I'd be curious to know if you ever saw any of those drones flying over the place, because they said that they were lurking around that little area right there. So some people said they saw them. I think we got a video or two out of that area, but I'd be curious to hear about that. But Happy New Year to you, though. And Enforcer, what say you?
I have to say a huge thanks to you for the support all the way from Copenhagen in Denmark. And speaking of countries within that area, we didn't cover this on the news last night, but there was an unfortunate incident that happened in Amsterdam. I think it's currently being investigated, but I believe it was one of their largest cathedrals in the area actually caught on fire and burned down. Actually, no, I've been pulling up nothing but Iranian cities today. I wish I could find it.
Are you talking about that Switzerland explosion?
No, I'm actually talking about that cathedral that burned down in Amsterdam yesterday.
I'm not aware of that personally.
Oh, dang. I'm trying to think of the name of it, folks, or where it was. It wasn't this one, I don't believe. No, it wasn't this one. I think this is the largest one in the city. But there was another one somewhere around here, and it caught on fire, and it burned. The spire at least burned, and I think most of the church has been burned now. Incredibly unfortunate, a loss of culture and history. But I'm sure the Dutch authorities will conduct a full investigation into it and see why the fire started. But nobody knows why at the moment. It was a sporadic fire. So also there it is, the Vondelkerk. There we go. Let me go pull that up.
Jackson T. Roy Kirk.
This one right here. It was this church, and the spire, from last I saw, had completely burned to cinder.
Well, that's awful.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I think you can go pull that up on Twitter, Mandy. I don't think we can show any of the clips. I'm sure a lot of them would probably be copyright, but it was a really cool church, a very historic one at that. Burned to the ground, almost. Kind of like the Notre Dame, so very unfortunate on that.
Yeah, I'm seeing it right here. It looks like, yeah, it does look like it burned down bad. It burned down or started burning on December 31st, which was yesterday. So let's see here. Yeah, we can show a picture of the thing burning, but we can't show the video itself because I don't know if it's copyrighted or not. But yeah, it says here that it's believed that youth gangs with fireworks are behind the blaze. So apparently, maybe someone shot some fireworks up in the air and maybe a spark hit the top of the cathedral, I guess, or the church. That seems a little bit odd.
Yeah, it does seem a little bit odd. And so it appears that this may have been an act of arson and a pretty significant one at that. But it's always unfortunate to see buildings like these burn. But you know, before, like, I gotta say this, folks, someone's about to make this political. Who knows who these people are? You have to know who they are and what they were doing it for and what their motive was. Could have been some stupid kids, like, you know, and it sounds like it may have been some really stupid kids. But churches in Europe do burn down from time to time. Like one that people don't really know about, that I think it was an absolute tragedy. Luckily, it was generally averted. Was the Yorkminster fire of the 1980s? Because Yorkminster is actually the largest cathedral in Northern Europe, and quite significant, and also dominates the York City skyline. What's unfortunate about it, though, is that it actually caught on fire in the 80s, and a whole back portion of the building, literally, it had its roof cave in from the fire, and it basically been ruined. The British government had to. Actually, it was the Church of England, had to raise, I think it was tens of millions or over £100 million in funds to try and refurbish the rear section of that building, and they eventually did. So it's in refurbished condition today, but not in entirely original condition. And that fire was solely by just pure accident or some sort of an odd coincidence, from what I remember. And then the Notre Dame fire was a renovation accident where sparks from the renovation had actually landed on some sort of a flammable visible part of the roofing, and then the fire just spread rapidly out of control and burned down the entire roof of the Notre Dame. I've heard, though, that they have gotten all the vaulting repaired, and you can actually see here on the satellite view, they're actually working on getting the roofing and framing done at the moment above the vaulting, to pretty much return the Notre Dame back to its original condition, refurbished. So, hopefully this situation will be one that is also repairable. I would have a feeling it is. Most of these cathedrals are made out of solid stone, brick, or some other masonry, so usually it's only the roof structure and maybe some of the vaulting that can be damaged in these fires. But the fires can also lead, if there is damage to the vaulting, to the structures being unstable, because the vaults actually are an incredibly important structural keystone, basically, to the survival of the building. So if the vaults in the roof are ever threatened or ever damaged, that actually could lead to a possible collapse of the building. So hopefully that isn't the case. I don't know what the condition of that current cathedral is at the moment, but hopefully it's in okay shape and is refurbishable. But anyways, with that, I hope that addresses that story. Well, also, by the way, Matthew, I think you mentioned the explosion in Switzerland at a restaurant today.
I think it was at like a ski resort or something. There was like a huge explosion at some place in Switzerland that I saw. They're saying, though, like the preliminary report is saying that it was not some type of criminal activity. They're not really sure what caused the explosion, but they're trying to tamp down the idea that it was any type of attack.
Yeah, I actually did hear that the Swiss authorities were saying they believe that it highly likely wasn't any form of an attack. And usually attacks in Switzerland are pretty rare. Like, terrorist attacks are in any form of political disturbance, as they're put in a more mild way, are basically unheard of in Switzerland most of the time. So I'd say it's probably unlikely. That's probably why the Swiss authorities are leaning towards it being unlikely, is that it just very rarely, if ever, happens in Switzerland. So, interesting occurrence there. And also, let's see, someone said all churches have scaffolding. Some of them do, some of them don't. Like, for example, St. Paul's Cathedral inside of London really doesn't have any scaffolding. There was actually a really weird incident that happened here, folks, some time ago, in that in the middle of I believe this is the nave, right under the dome of the cathedral, someone actually fell from the gantry up there, because there's a gantry in that dome. It's right there. You can see the railing for it. Someone actually slipped. It wasn't intentional. Someone actually slipped off of that gantry and fell the full 90 feet from the gantry into the middle of the nave in the cathedral. And they did survive the fall, at least initially, but they did, of course, obviously later die from their injuries on the way to the hospital. Real freak occurrence. I don't even know if anyone knows how they actually slipped over the railing. They were in the middle of a tour group when it happened, from what I remember, but a really weird sort of a situation that happened there nonetheless. But St. Paul's Cathedral is absolutely beautiful, and is one of the coolest cathedrals in Britain. But anyways, with that, enough of the cathedral talk, folks. It's time for us to get on into the next question. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so moving into our next super chat, this one goes to Jocelyn White, and thank you very much, Josh, for that $20 support right there, and we do appreciate that very much. And Josh said, thanks for always being the reliable, factual, and honest, and I don't get to watch as often as I'd like to live, but love it when I can, and LLTLSA, and take a question from the chat.
And thank you so much for the support and enjoying this channel and helping us to keep this thing running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we would have never been able to make this thing possible, and we would never have been able to keep this thing rolling. And so a humongous thanks to you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And we will make sure to get a live chat in your honor. So what do we got, Matthew?
And the live chat in honor of Josh is going to go to Oscar Meyer Russian, who said, do you two think that if Israel attacked the Iranian military during all this, that it would cause a complete collapse quickly? And sorry if this was asked. And I would say, for my opinion on that, I would say probably not. It would simply cause chaos that is really unnecessary, because the Iranian people, it's up to them to overthrow their government. Like, Israel can try to assist with it by providing weaponry or moral support, but for Israel to jump into it and start attacking the Iranian government at the same time, that could end up backfiring, to be perfectly honest, because the Iranian people have to do this themselves, because they have to be the ones to actually carry it out, because someone has to be on the ground to make sure that a new government can be installed, and that's up to the people. So I would say probably not. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say it probably wouldn't. I would have to agree with Enforcer Matt on that. I think it's better for them to basically be contained in their own little fishbowl at this point with no foreign influence, at least direct influence, like a direct attack on Iran. Because a direct attack on Iran could give the Iranian government the justification to conduct a massacre, and they could conduct one violently enough that it could put down the rebellion and stop it outright. And it may also stop the rebellions due to the fear of the Israelis bombing basically everyone, and then they could all sit there and unify at least temporarily in their defense. So I don't really think it'd be a great idea, at least in my opinion. And I would have to say, generally for that, I don't think anyone should be doing anything to Iran right now, unless it's through an intelligence agency supporting this active revolution. So I hope that does address that well. Go ahead.
And also another thing is too, there's a risk that if Israel starts attacking Iran while the revolution is taking place inside of the country, it begins to look like Israel might be trying to take Iran over at that point, which is not a good look either. Because I'm all in favor for Israel defending themselves. I'm not in favor of Israel trying to install governments inside of Iran, because Iran, the objective here is for Iran to overthrow the extremists, which is the Ayatollah's regime, get rid of them, and then have some sort of governance that the people of Iran decide that they want. Now, obviously, it can't be an extremist terrorist regime. That's not going to be permitted. But at the same time, though, Israel can't install a government inside of that country, and they also don't want to have the appearance that they're trying to topple the government either. It needs to be the people doing it.
I would definitely agree. And also I see some people debating in the chat what I was meaning earlier about Israel does Israel things, and I'm not really too big of a fan of them. So I'll explain that really quickly, because I see some people trying to interpret it, so I'll just put it out in plain language the exact reasoning why I say that. Israel is not America's greatest ally. I'd even put it, they're hardly even really that much of an ally, to be entirely honest, in my opinion. The Israeli government, it says that they're friendly with the Russians. Any government that is supposed to be an allied one to the United States, generally it's never a good look to say that Russia serves your interests. So that's one thing that is a huge strike against them. The second strike against them is that they are more than willing to conduct any action that they need in the area, even if it jeopardizes our position in the Middle East, if they want to. Like, for example, that missile attack that they conducted on Doha, Qatar to try and kill the Hamas leadership was completely in violation of an active treaty that we had, to where all of those Hamas guys were to be exiled from the Gaza Strip to Qatar. The Israelis agreed to that, we agreed to that, and Qatar agreed to be the ones to house them there. And then the Israelis completely violated the treaty that we had made with the Qataris and them, and attacked Doha, Qatar to try and kill those people. That could have jeopardized their position heavily with the Qataris, which are incredibly important for our strategic influence in the region, considering that we base a lot of our U.S. Air Forces out of Qatar. The Al Udeid Air Base is one of the most important ones that we have access to in the entirety of the region. And, you know, when we put it that way in that metric, when people sit there and say Israel is a great ally, I just got to ask, how? Like we have a common enemy in the Islamic Republic of Iran, and to that end Israel does serve our purpose. But outside of that, they don't allow any of our forces to base inside of their country unless of their air defense forces. So they only allow our guys to be put in the line of jeopardy if we're defending them, and that's it. And I mean literal direct defense from incoming missile and drone fire. That's the only time they ever allow our forces in. They don't allow in the Army, they don't allow in the Air Force, they don't allow the Navy to use any of their ports as a possible replenishment zone or a port or a facility. They will conduct any action that they want in the area, even if it is against U.S. interests. And so I just don't really see the reason why a lot of people are like, oh, well, you know, the Israelis are very much justified. And on top of that, we already know, like, just looking at how they do things, recently there's an ongoing internal sort of an investigation or a proceeding that's going on, and we've seen this done multiple times in the past. Whenever a war happens, the Israelis go, oh, wait a minute, we have to put the whole corruption trial basically on hold because we've got something more important to deal with. We'll come back to that when we have time. And then they get done with one war, and then the corruption trial starts again, and then they go, oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry, we have to go bomb someone else. We're going to have to put that on hold again. And then they keep doing that. And at this point, it's basically what their actions are in the Middle East right now. It's not even more so to deal with existential threats. It appears that it's more so to postpone any corruption trial and proceeding that's going on in Israel right now, because literally every single time they go, okay, we're reopening the corruption trial, we're going to get that back on the road, they go, oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry, I just realized it's 1 o'clock, we have to go bomb someone, so we're going to have to put that on hold again. And then they go bomb someone. Like right now, like, well, and also on top of that, folks, another thing is that as far as the West works, we don't really conduct preemptive attacks a lot unless if it's an absolute emergency. And with the Islamic Republic of Iran possibly creating a nuclear weapon, that is an emergency and an existential threat that would require us to take preemptive action. One of the few times I'd ever say preemptive action is 100% necessary. But the Israelis will take that to the nines and go, we have to bomb anyone in the area, even after we got a peace treaty in place with them that we technically agreed to where we're going to cease hostilities. We have to go bomb them again. So, it's like, I don't really get it, because it doesn't really make a lot of sense at all that people go, oh, the Israelis are our most important ally in the region, when I could honestly tell y'all the Saudis, the Qataris, or even Kuwait, at least strategically for the United States directly, are far more important allies in the region than the Israelis are. Because if we stop being an ally with Israel, basically nothing in the region as far as our position as the United States has changed, except for Israel is no longer an ally. If Saudi Arabia stops being our ally, most U.S. forces in the area have to leave. Most U.S. air forces and ground forces that are based in Saudi Arabia right now have to pack up, and they either have to move to Kuwait or Qatar. Or if the same situation happened with Kuwait, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia at the same time, our forces are basically expelled out of the Middle East, except for the small outposts we have in Syria and Iraq. That's why I say, as far as Israel being an ally to the United States, they're an ally as far as it goes to fight against the Iranians. But in any other situation, they basically count for a hill of beans, and they have very questionable loyalties, considering that they consider the Russian Federation to be a somewhat friendly country. So
The crazy part is the Russians are literally aligned with the Iranians. So when Israel takes a sort of neutral stance with Russia and also speaks to Putin on the phone, they're essentially speaking with a group of people that's supporting their destruction through Iran. So it's kind of weird with that, how that whole situation works right there. It seems like they would want to cut Russia off and leave it up to that, basically, because Iran's clearly against Israel, like that's their arch nemesis.
yeah, I'd have to agree. I got to say this, folks. I have nothing against the Israelis, but at the same time, they're as close and they're as lukewarm an ally to us as the Turks are. Like, just being honest. I know that there's a whole deal that goes on with Israel where like people just irrationally hate Israel, or they irrationally love them to the point that some people in America act like we have to sacrifice our country to save theirs. Or some other people take the approach that we literally have to destroy Israel at every single mean and measure. I look at it more so from a balanced perspective, in that dealing with Iran, it's great to be friends with them. In every other situation, we could completely cut off ties with them, and we would be in the same position we are in right now in the Middle East without them. If the Israelis don't like hearing that, they ought to put themselves in a position to where they actually serve a mutual interest to the United States, to where I don't have to say that. Like, for one, they could allow U.S. Air Forces to be based in Israel at the Nevatim Air Base and other facilities. That would be one thing to help out, where I go, well, actually, the Israelis are fairly important for our strategic position in the region. Or they could do things like, possibly not try and torpedo our diplomatic relations with other countries in the Middle East, like Qatar, by bombing them against our permission. That might be something that might be a little bit beneficial as well. But considering that they do those things, and it doesn't really appear that they really give a shit, that they go against their interests, that's why I say they're kind of lukewarm ally, and I'm not really that big on them. It's except for going up against Iran. So with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And also, real quick, I put a poll up right here, which is unbelievably perfectly equally split. I've never really seen one quite like this. But the question says, would you support Israel launching an attack on Iran in the midst of the Iranian revolution that's currently taking place? 50% said yes, and 50% said no. It's literally a dead split poll right here. It's two different camps, and they're equal. So I would say, like I was mentioning earlier, I would not support Israel launching an attack on Iran in the midst of the revolution, because it has a bad appearance to it. Also, by the way, what purpose would that serve? If it looks like the Iranian people are going to overthrow their government, which it does look like at this point, given them enough time and enough dedication that they will get it done eventually, then why would Israel want to launch an attack on Iran at that point? Because if the government's going to fall, that's the objective. That's the objective behind the attacks, is to eliminate that threat. So the Iranian people people are going to eliminate that threat on behalf of Israel, really more like on behalf of themselves, actually. And Israel can provide moral support, aid to Iran, and that is plenty good enough. So that's why I am in the 51% actually now that said no. Apparently that changed some people's minds just then. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to go with the 51% who voted no as well. I don't think any form of strikes, either by the U.S. or Israel, will benefit the situation on the ground. This is more so something that we need to work through in intelligence agencies to see succeed. Conducting direct, overt actions against them will only bury this and make it a lot harder for it to succeed. If we arm these people and pay them, not pay them, but equip them with the funds they need to be able to fight, they actually will be able to pull off this revolution successfully. But any direct, overt action, I think it's going to end up negatively, at least in the outcome to this ongoing revolution. So I hope that does address that the best I can, in my opinion, as well. And with that, we're back into the questions.
Also, by the way, I find something interesting here. Someone said it's pretty stupid to think that Israel does not have legitimate reasons to take their security seriously by any means necessary. By any means, you got to be careful, though. Like, when you say by any means necessary, that's wild to say something like that. You can't just say by any means necessary to stuff. Like, there's always got to be limits. Like, for example, there's, like, the Geneva Conventions. You can't just say by any means necessary. The moment people start going into stuff like that, horrible things start happening to people because then it's just a free-for-all. So we can't have free-for-alls. Like, there has to be rules. There has to be limitations. So I support Israel in their defense, but I don't support them doing whatever the hell they want. Like, that's not a free pass. That goes for everybody. That goes for any of our allies. You can't just have a free pass to do whatever you want. There has to be rules. Also, there has to be rules for the United States as well. Even though we're the de facto leader of NATO, I mean, Europe has to hold us accountable too. I mean, America can't do whatever they want either. Like, for example, striking boats without proper justification. I mean, it's the international community's responsibility to hold each other responsible. That's what makes good allies, basically. So I don't believe in that whole thing of whatever they want to do is okay.
Oh, I see. So what you're saying, Crusher, is that the Russians have a legitimate reason as well to take their security seriously by any means necessary, because the Nazi Germans invaded them in World War II, and they clearly can't have that happen again. So if they even have to go to war with the entirety of NATO and also conduct a genocide like they are in Ukraine, that's fine, right? Hell, I mean, the Nazis didn't have any rules. You just said that right there. And so why should the Russians have rules today? I mean, hell, NATO to them is a bunch of Nazis. That's what they say. And why in the world should China stop at their own national security interests? They ought to secure those by any means necessary, even if it means going into a possible nuclear war with the United States to invade and take Taiwan, to take control of the lithography machines that produce the semiconductors at TSMC. They ought to go to any length and measure to get that done, because any means, right? I mean, you start getting it, like, that's where I find irrationality in the whole topic with Israel, because in every other situation, Russia's invasion of Ukraine is illegal, China's invasion of Taiwan would be illegal, but whenever the Israelis see a blade of grass get blown by the wind a little bit in the Middle East, they have a right to bomb everybody without question, which is incredibly bizarre that they are the exception to the norm everywhere else in the world. It doesn't make any sense at all, because why in the, and here's also the bottom line, Aaron Crusher. If the Israelis have a right to do anything by any means, even to the point of screwing the United States over, then they can do that on their own without us giving them $20 billion a year and without us arming them every single year. That's the baseline there to me. And also, you're saying, well, the big difference is I understand the difference between right and wrong. Well, if you're in Russia, they're fighting the good fight right now. I don't know if you know that. The fight of right and wrong is based off of our perspective as a citizen of our nation. What is best and what is not good for the country, not as what is good for someone else. Because if the Israelis,
Go ahead. I thought you were finished.
Because Crusher, if the Israelis are screwing us over in the Middle East, then they're doing nobody in America any good. Like with what they were doing by bombing Qatar. That was not doing us any good at all. And I'm not at all for the concept of, I'm an American that puts American interest and the interest of the citizenry first and foremost, except if it's the Israelis, and then they have the right to shit on everyone's interest in America just because they're Israel. That makes no sense at all. Like they can either make sure to balance our interest with theirs, or they can go on their own. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, we got to have limits on stuff. I'm not ever in favor of let's just have a free for all ever. I'm not really sure why people think it's okay to say let's have a free for all. It's like look at all the times in the past, like the enforcer was just mentioning there, that there has been a free for all where it was we'll do this by any means necessary. That's usually when atrocities take place. So we don't want to get into that whole realm right there. We want to avoid that. That goes for everybody. There is no such thing as a completely righteous cause. I mean, there's got to be limits. But anyways, with that, we're jumping into our next super chat here, which goes to OK State, who puts in a $20 support. And this is actually a super chat from last night, by the way. And he added in a clarification from the super chat last night. And OK State said, my super chat last night said, with the uprising in Iran, should the USA and Israel strike the nuclear facilities again and take advantage of the chaos, or would it be better to wait?
I think it'd be better to wait right now because I think that their nuclear program has been stymied a great deal by the strikes because they haven't tested a nuclear weapon yet. But I would also have to say this answer is completely based off the concept that they're not on the very cusp of testing and fielding nuclear weaponry right now. I think that we ought to give this revolution time and wait it out because they might overthrow the government and completely denuclearize on their own, especially if they end up becoming some form of a constitutional monarchy or some form of a democracy. They might completely denuclearize voluntarily. So that's what I would think would generally come out of this, and we want to give these people a chance to succeed. If we get involved too early, the Iranian government is going to put these people down, and while their government will collapse several years from now, we're still going to have to deal with the Islamic Republic for those next several years. We might have a chance right now to just sit there and watch this revolution succeed and support them through covert means, to then have a brand new government brought in to where we don't even have to strike them at all, and we can just watch and see them denuclearize themselves or take a much better route, at least in terms of their foreign policy and even their domestic actions in the future.
Yeah, and also Israel, if we're just being straight up here, Israel's already likely taking advantage of the chaos without having to conduct blatant direct strikes. The country is crawling with Mossad. Like we saw that during the 12-day war. Iran is crawling with Mossad agents. They're literally all over the place. They're probably in every single city in the country, I would imagine. So I would guess, logically speaking, I mean, why wouldn't they? I would imagine that they're probably helping mobilize people on the ground. And obviously they're not going around saying, hey, I'm a Mossad agent. They're not doing that. They're going around covertly acting like Iranians, and they're probably spurring them to action on the ground. So they're probably already taking advantage of it. I wouldn't be shocked either if the CIA was also on the ground at the same time, because naturally we have agents there. So why would we not mobilize them to get the people to action?
I would definitely agree on that. And also, I saw someone say something along. Let's see here. I got to try and find it in the chat. The chat's actually moving kind of quickly right now. Someone said, "Dang, let's see." Someone said, "Hating on Israel seems to be the thing nowadays." Here's the thing. Like I got to say. It's weird how people take something as like an actual criticism as just hating. Like nobody ever gets nuance. Like, and also some people are like, well, clearly it's not good to support Hamas. Who said if you don't look at the Israelis as a saint worthy of sacrificing the whole country, then you support Hamas. Like that's just propaganda, folks. Here's the truth of it: the people in Hamas and Hezbollah chant death to Israel and death to America. Those people are clearly enemies of the Republic, but they're also supported and funded by Iran. So we get back into the full circle here, looking at it for what it is. The Israelis fight the Iranians just like we do. We bomb the Houthis, they bomb the Houthis. They fight Hamas and Hezbollah. That's pretty good for us. They're fighting the Iranian proxy forces in the area that are destabilizing the region. That's to where Israel serves a purpose for the United States. Outside of that, though, they basically do whatever they want. And they don't really serve an interest of the United States in any mutual form. And as a matter of fact, it's more so parasitic at that point than it is beneficial, because they generally either jeopardize their diplomatic position in the Middle East, or they just do whatever they want, and there's really no care about how the U.S. interest is concerned in their decision-making process. Like in America, we put the Israelis first and foremost basically every day of the week. When Ukraine gets 800 million in the next 2 years, Israel will get 50 billion. When Ukraine can hardly even get a a single weapon from the United States without the Europeans paying for it, the Israelis are going to get some free F-35Is that are made specifically to their specs, pretty much as good as the American F-35s, if not even slightly better. And then at the same time, they'll still go around and do whatever they want, not really caring whether or not that's going to put the U.S. in a fix or not in the Middle East. That's where I have the issue. If they would actually care.
Although to be fair though, like it's not Israel's fault that they're getting the billions of dollars. That's more of like a U.S. political thing, really, because if Israel is able to lobby and get the money, that's part of the game. Every country lobbies, so it's more of like why is the United States overly favoring Israel over all of our other allies? That's more of the question. It's not really their fault, though. I wouldn't say.
Well, but here's the thing I'm saying, though. If that is the case, though, if they can get all of that support from the United States every single year, then it ought to cross their mind in the government in Israel to go, maybe we ought to run this by America first to make sure that we're not putting them in a bind here in the Middle East before we do something. Like, if y'all looked at how they conducted the Doha Qatar attack, they knew the U.S. would have a problem with that attack because it's clearly in violation of a standing treaty that we had to have all of the Hamas leaders exiled to Qatar, and it also was going to put us in an incredibly rough position in a rock and a hard place with the Qatari government. So what they did is that they flew all of their aircraft out of their air bases into the northern part of the Red Sea and then fired them in basically a radar dead zone for us, so that way we couldn't see that they fired off the missiles or even see where their aircraft went to tell them to call that off or stop it before they were able to successfully fire the missiles. They did that knowing the U.S. would have an issue with it, knowing that put us in a hard place, and they still did it anyways, regardless or not how it would reflect on the U.S. with our very own planes that we gave them. That's the problem that I have. If they wanted to do that, they should have called us up and said, hey, are y'all okay with that? And we would have gone, absolutely not, because you're going to put us in a hard place with the Qataris.
True, but at the same time, though, I will say this: that was a bad action for Israel to take. We said that both at the time, but since then, though, the United States behind closed doors apparently gave Israel a very strong talking to behind closed doors. We're not told exactly how nasty it got, but it was apparently a pretty bad talking down to when it comes to that whole situation, which was deserved because Israel should never have done that. They put us in jeopardy in the region. But at the same time, though, they haven't done anything like that since, and also they have been actively seeking permission to conduct strikes on, wherever they're trying to conduct strikes on. I think Iran is the next target. I think that's what they recently came to the White House for, was to discuss that. And the last report was the U.S. told them no, and they've respected that so far. So unless they do something stupid again, then they seem to be backing off and respecting the U.S. making the final decision again.
Maybe, but like they're already saying right now that we're definitely going to bomb them. Basically every news agency in Israel that's getting word from the Israeli government, oh, we're going to bomb them very soon. Even with the U.S. saying we don't really want that right now, hold off. Like there's endless situations with that to where they've done something against our interests. Like, for example, when Jelani came into power in Syria, we generally in America, but that at this point, by the way, folks, we're talking about the current administration with the situation right now in Syria. When Jelani came into power, everyone wanted to give him a minute, including us, to see what he was going to be. Was he going to be a good leader, or was he going to be basically the terrorist that he was? So the Israelis just bombed him literally once he came into power, like literally 2 days later after Assad fled. They just started bombing SIG forces across the whole country without even waiting to see what the guy was going to turn into. While the U.S. was trying to, game that out and see, the Russians are still at the Khmenin Air Base near Latakia. Let's give it a minute to see if they'll just push them out and see if they're going to be good guys on our side or bad guys on the Russian side. We need to figure them out. And then the Israelis said, we're not going to give them any breathing room. We're practically going to try and screw them over already and just bomb them and maybe even incense them and enrage them against the West to where they might allow the Russians to just stay there like they were under Assad. It's like that wasn't really good planning at all, and it once again might have put us in a bad spot because it would have left the Russians with a permanent anchor like they had in the Assad regime to stay in the region. Now we know that luckily didn't really piss off Jelani too much apparently, and they're still trying to get the Russians out of there at this point. I think they've actually left by now. We haven't gotten a lot of information on what's going on at the Khmenin Air Base, but that generally was the run of the mill. But at the same time, though, that's not a good position to put the U.S. in, where we're trying to figure out where someone is now that they just took power and then bomb them immediately, being a U.S. affiliated country, and put it off on a very sour note immediately. Like that was very questionable as well. And also on top of that, like the biggest bone I've got to pick with the Israeli government right now, or specifically Netanyahu, is that in the last parliamentary session, he said that the Russians serve Israel's interests. And it's like, you can't be a Western aligned country and then also say that a sworn enemy of the United States is serving your interests simultaneously. That puts you in a middle of the road position where you can't be that strong of an ally just because of your affiliation with enemy states. So with that, I hope that addresses that well. And we are on to the next one.
All right, so jumping to our next super chat, this one goes to Dallas Bucky, and Dallas put in a 20, and thank you very much, Dallas, for that support, and we do appreciate it. He said, it hurts me to say it because it may be construed as political. Let's see here. Let me proofread it. He scared me with that first one right there. Let's see. Now, sadly, Dallas, on this one right here, that topic there, because it's a current event happening in the United States, that is going to set people off like crazy. So while I would read it, if we could have people not going berserk over it, I would, but sadly we can't. So thank you very much for the support, though. He did say, I love the hard work on the channel, and it's my only source of military news.
And thank you so much for enjoying the news, and thank you for supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 10 that just came in from Slinger, and thank you very much, Slinger, for that support. He said, USS Liberty, 34 American lives, 1967. I think that is a true event right there, but that was a long time ago.
Yeah, that was a really long time ago. If y'all don't know the story, the USS Liberty was a U.S. Surveillance ship that we sent into the area, I believe, in the midst of the 6-day or 7-day war. I believe that was the one with the battles for the Golan Heights. And some Israeli Mirages flew over the USS Liberty to visually ID it, incredibly close, to the point that the crew members on board said that they could actually see the pilots in the cockpit. And then later, those same Mirages came by and strafed and attacked the USS Liberty and killed a large amount of the service members that were on board. The Israelis still to this day state that it was a case of misidentified identity, although the vessel was flying a U.S. flag and was, clearly a U.S. surveillance vessel. They claimed that it was a case of mistaken identity. Generally back then, though, here's the thing. The U.S. government did not take that all too well back then, but they allowed it to reluctantly slide, because friendly fire always seems like it would be really hard to conduct until you actually watch how often friendly fire happens. Because even in the Gulf War, there were a couple of instances then that some A-10 Warthogs conducted some friendly fire, and even some Apaches with advanced optical systems ended up wiping out an entire British signals unit in the middle of the desert. Literally, pretty much everyone in the unit. I don't think there was a single survivor out of that. I think it was like 16 to 20 British service members killed. And those individuals were directly targeted by the gunship and its 30mm autocannon and were taken out directly. It wasn't anything like an indirect attack where they were flying at hundreds of miles an hour with really no optical systems, trying to see whether or not something was an enemy ship or an enemy combatants or not. They literally saw them in the IR and went, that looks like an enemy to me, and they lit that British signals unit up and killed about 20 of them. So, I would say that probably is a case of friendly fire. A lot of people, or more so, mistaken identity, that probably is the actual explanation there. I actually would take that at face value, because a lot of people say they intentionally did that, but the Israelis wouldn't really have a reason to intentionally attack, and especially at that time and age, U.S. forces within the area. So I think it actually was just mistaken identity. So I hope that does address.
But whatever the hell it was, it happened back in 1967, which was, what was that, 60 or 70 years ago. So, if it was intentional, if it was accidental, whatever the hell it was, it happened getting almost up close to a decade, or actually a century ago, getting up close to it. So, it's 100 years. If it's 60 or 70 years, it's getting up toward a century. So, it happened a long time ago, is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, that was like 60 years ago. Like a century ago would be like the 1920s. Like we would be before even the.
I'm saying it's getting up toward a century. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, well, I suppose. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. So our next one goes to Robert Krogan, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Robert, for that $10 support. He said, hello there, and hope that your new year started well. And honestly, so far it has started well, thankfully. Now, it's not going well for some. Like, for example, for Iran, it's not going well at all. For the Russians, it's not going good. And I mean, some people, it's kind of sucking already, the 2026 is actually. But, Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say it is a rough year for some, a good year for several. But I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it rolling. So a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Holy DCE, who put in a 10. And also, it's good to see you once again. It's been a minute. And they said, could we see Mossad agents support or give firearms to the Iranian protesters? Oh, and yes, we could. Absolutely. Because you remember back during the 12-day war in Tehran, you saw those missiles that were being fired from building to building. Those were allegedly Mossad agents firing those missiles and taking out in targeted assassinations certain individuals in the Iranian government. And they were picking them off like ants for a while. Like they were just going around. You would see a little twirly bird missile jump from one building to the next. And then the next minute you'd hear, oh, so-and-so just got eliminated. You're like, oh, okay. I mean, it sounds like they were taking them out pretty effectively to me. So I would say certainly. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, can you reread that one again, old boy?
Do you think Mossad agents are going to be giving firearms to the Iranians?
Oh, great heavens, of course they will. Do you think they miss out on an opportunity to possibly topple the entire Iranian government on a hands-off approach? Absolutely not. If this revolution looks like it's actually gaining speed, and it looks like it is right now, they are definitely going to be arming and supporting them. The CIA most likely will be as well, because Iran is an enemy of the United States, and the CIA and generally the government takes a position that Iran is a hostile power. So the CIA will also be doing that in its own way, through its own channels and systems that they have in Iran, along with Mossad. So hopefully we'll see that this thing gains momentum, because this is the one thing that we actually have a common interest with the Israelis for, is against Iran. That's generally where both of us have a mutual aligned interest, or basically an alliance, is dealing with the Islamic Republic of Iran and trying to take them out, or at least greatly decrease their influence throughout the Middle East. So I hope that does address that the best I can. Big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 10 from Cody Bell. And thank you very much, Cody, for that support. He said, the October 7 war launched by Iran turned out to be one of the great geopolitical catastrophes of the generation, and freedom to the Iranian people.
And I would definitely agree. It didn't turn out well at all, and it certainly appears like it's not turning out all too well for him in the present day. That may be one of the reasons why the Iranian public is conducting this revolution, is because they're tired of the warlike stance the revolutionary government takes on an endless basis. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and a big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 10 from Kachulian. He said, Reza Pahlavi has made statements about wanting to make Iran a democracy again. And being honest, we effed up with Iran multiple times, but this could be our chance to set things right. Now, how many governments inside the Middle East are actually democracies, though? I mean, tell me, Enforcer, if you know off the top of your head, how many actually are?
None. Oh, well, Iraq is technically one.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like a hardly functioning republic, but it technically is a republic. It has a president, and it does have a Congress, a lot like the United States. But I mean, Iraq hardly even functions, though. If you look at their government, they have a very loose control over most of the country, except for the Tigris and Euphrates River region, down to Basra and up to Baghdad. But basically, everywhere else might as well be the Wild West at this point.
Yeah, I mean, that's my point being, pointing that out right there. Democracy works for certain countries. It does work. Well, obviously, I mean, it's worked extremely well for the United States. Hopefully it keeps working well, but it's worked extremely well historically. But in the Middle East, it seems like democracy is not a preferred form of governance. It's not because the people want to be subjugated by a dictatorship. It's just that democracy just doesn't seem to line up with the ideals there for whatever reason. And I mean, every country that's sovereign has the right to pick their governance structure. If they want to pick something that's not a democracy and move it to like a monarchy or something, or whatever they want, they can do that. But, you know, we don't want to go in and force something. We've tried doing that as the United States before in the Middle East, trying to force a democracy and transplant it there. If they don't want it, they don't want it. That's the bottom line.
I would have to say, in general, I would think that it probably won't work in Iran. Culturally, what's very interesting about this is that you have to actually have a cultural sort of a base to work with to have a democracy. If your culture doesn't really support the interests of specific groups and balancing those and allowing those individual groups or interests to have a say, then you really can't have a democracy. And to be entirely honest, most Middle Eastern cultures just don't really have that cultural base to where a democracy can easily be supported. Israel is one that generally has a parliamentary form of a democracy. But I do have to give a caveat that one's a little bit questionable, like as far as how the elections work and stuff in there. But the Iraqis are really the only one that technically has a functioning democracy at the moment. But when we say it's functioning, it's like functioning at the most basic level, and it hardly functions. Most countries in the region usually have some form of an absolute monarchy. Basically, every country in the area does. Jordan is one, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain, the UAE, Oman, Kuwait, and Iraq was also a dictatorship until it was deposed in 2003 by the coalition. Iran had a constitutional monarchy before the overthrow in 1979, but it generally more so operated as an absolute monarchy as well. And we've never really seen a government inside of Iran that operated like a true constitutional monarchy, like we would see in, say, the United Kingdom or any other government within Northern Europe that still is a constitutional monarchy. And we've never seen an actual federal republic system or any other form of a democratic system of democracy ever exist in Iran to see if that would even work. And considering that their culture has never really had any sort of significant influence, say, from groups like ancient Rome or Greece, at least in their cultural upbringing, I guess you could call it, there probably wouldn't be that much of a cultural base to work off of to actually have a democracy. You can try and put one in
That's
there.
the problem. That is the problem. I was just thinking when you said that. I think the reason why democracy rarely works in the Middle East is because, typically speaking, they want to tie up religion in their government, and for a democracy, you really can't do that. The moment you start tying up religion into it, which religion naturally has certain rules that they want people to abide by, they try to force that on the people, and that runs to the contrary to democracy. Democracy is ruled by the people, not ruled by the religion. So, I mean, I think that's where they go wrong. That's why it's not compatible.
I would have to agree, but also I see some people saying, well, the Persians are quite a sophisticated people. It has nothing to do with that. I will agree. The Iranians are incredibly well read and generally learn the Iranian, not the government, but the Iranian public. But that doesn't necessarily mean a whole lot, especially when you have cultural tradition and cultural influence going into the creation of a government. Because if you look at the People's Republic of China, the Chinese people, as a people, are incredibly learned and incredibly intelligent. Historically, throughout the thousands of years that some form of a Chinese state has existed. But they lean towards authoritarianism because of their cultural roots. And that's just because every single Chinese government that has ever existed has never been any form of a democracy. It has always been some form of a right to rule through heavenly ascension, which is what they technically called it. But in the modern day, they basically do that through the rule of the party, of the Chinese Communist Party. If you look at Japan and the Koreas, like the Kingdom of Joseon and also the Empire of Japan, they also leaned heavily into authoritarianism, although they were quite learned and also fairly intelligent people. If you look at South American countries, especially any of them that used to be former Spanish colonies, which existed on the encomienda system, which was more so authoritarian and extractive in nature, you'll see that democracies function quite erratically in those areas and hardly function because of their influence culturally from the encomienda system that permeated in that region for about 350 years. One of the few places that democracy works is really Europe, because Europe had a very significant influence over the years, especially because of how medieval society evolved, and also the Enlightenment that came right after the medieval age, and generally also that of the Renaissance, although the Renaissance really isn't a specific age. That's generally why Europe is very conducive for democratic government systems, or at least democratic beliefs, was because of the culmination that led to the Enlightenment of the late 1700s and also in the early 1800s, and then that's what led to the founding of the U.S. And then the U.S. basically is the giver of democracies globally. If it wasn't for the U.S. occupation of Germany, and let's see, where else? Japan, South Korea, and elsewhere, a lot of democracies wouldn't really exist around the world. The rest of them that exist, like the parliamentary democracies, you basically have to give credit to the British for countries like Canada, Australia, New Zealand, because if it wasn't for the British influence in those countries, they also wouldn't have operational democracies either. They would have some other form of the governance. So I would hope that it would be possible, and I wouldn't say that it's totally beyond them, but they would be an enigma more so than the norm if they were able to pull that off. But I hope that does address that well, and a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, Brian Blairstown said the Philippines. Yeah, the Philippines also had significant influence from the U.S. as well, but their democracy also kind of is a little bit questionable because the U.S. only had influence over the Philippines for about 50 years, and the Spanish had influence on the Philippines for hundreds. Once again, on the encomienda system. So still, it's kind of a bit of a mixed bag on how it works in the Philippines. It kind of is a bit of a rougher system. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. And a big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Holy DCE once again, who puts in a 10. And they said, LOSA, and we know that there's been a water crisis that's still going on in the north, but now faced with an economic crisis, are we going to be entering a breaking point for the Iranians?
I think we actually might be entering a breaking point for the Iranians, even if it wasn't for any economic crises within the country. I think this might actually be the end of the Iranian government. So with that,
I think they've snapped right now. I think they've pretty much snapped. They've gone past the point of no return. I mean, what are they going to do? Just all go back home like in a couple of days and just call it quits? I don't think so.
Yeah, I would have to say, I don't think that's going to be happening. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and a big thanks to you for the support. And we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 10 from Joppy. And Joppy said that China is very invested, that is, in Iran. So it's hard to think that they won't make a move in one way or another. They could be fine with a new government, but they won't let Iran escape from China's influence. But at the same time, though, Joppy, when it comes to China and Iran, yes, China is invested in Iran. But the catch is, though, China, even though they're willing to take on the United States like over issues like Taiwan, they don't want to jump into a hornet's nest. And the Iranian situation was going to escalate naturally. Like the U.S. was going to return to hit the nuclear sites. That was an imminent thing that was about to happen. So China's not stupid on that front. They're not going to jump into the middle of that. So they'll probably back off. Whatever's happening with Iran right now, they'll probably let it happen. They may try to maybe send some aid like Russia's doing, but outside of that, they're not going to actually like step in the middle of it and risk getting caught up in it. But Enforcer, what do you think?
I would have to say, if the Iranian government is overthrown, the Chinese basically have no ability to really turn the situation around or try and torture the new Iranian government, because as soon as that new government comes into being, the first thing they can do is request U.S. assistance and support and make it clear that their position is with the United States. So if the Chinese mess with them, then they're messing with the United States, basically, on the global stage, and then that'll probably get the Chinese to back off. So they actually could escape the Chinese grasp if the government is overthrown quite easily, as long as they immediately petition for some form of U.S. support or U.S. acknowledgement of their government. So with that, I hope that does address it the best I can, and a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And also, we have a $20 support from Slinger once again. And thank you very much, Slinger, for that support right there. And unfortunately, I cannot read that super chat right there because that does get extremely political right there. But thank you very much once again for that support. And we also have a 10 from Ed. And Ed said, LOSA, an Irish Ed here. And also, you don't like the dentists. Oh, wait, hold on a second. Let me see here. Let me see what this means first. I'm not familiar with this term. Okay, I got you. I thought you meant something else, Ed. He said, you don't like the dentist, so that means you're just an anti-dentite. Love Irish Ed.
And Seinfeld's a great show. Seinfeld's a really good show. I was actually watching clips of that while I was putting the news together today. Like, I don't really watch them, though. I just kind of get to hear them on another tab. But I forgot what it was, but it was the episode when George was dating the woman who played the piano, and Jerry Seinfeld had put the Pez dispenser on Elaine's lap, and she busted out laughing in the middle of her piano recital. It was that episode. Honestly, Seinfeld is a really funny show. It's honestly my favorite sitcom, in my opinion. But with that, I hope that does address it the best I can, Irish Ed. Huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a $10 support from Bethel Gues. And thank you very much for the support, by the way. They said, "Are you certain that the U.S. and Russia are sworn enemies?" Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
But there are factions in the U.S. that seriously support Russia, and I would say more like semi-adversary. Nah.
Nah.
Don't confuse the group of idiots with the entirety of the United States. The polls have been coming out, and the polls show that the majority of Americans support Ukraine, contrary to all the other statements that you're hearing out there in the public. It's just that the pro-Russia part of the United States, which is a shrinking faction of people, they're extremely loud because they're idiots, and usually idiots are the loudest. So that's why it sounds like that. So it's not that case. But Enforcer, what say you?
Yeah, there's like also on top of that, there's always a group of people who support something in America. Like there's a group of people in America that support the Houthis and support ISIS and others. You know, there's people who are a part of other domestic terror organizations here in America. You know, the ones who wear the white robes or are in other groups like that. There's all kinds of people who believe all kinds of crazy stuff in this country, but that doesn't mean that that's reflective of the large majority of the United States. The people who say that Russia is a friendly country, they're in quite a small minority. Compared to the people who say that Russia is an enemy of the United States and also the people who support Ukraine. All polling shows that, at least recently, that's been independently verified, that there's not really a lot of people who look at it that way. And on top of that, another thing is that if we're saying that, then the United States wasn't an enemy of Nazi Germany. We're just kind of semi-adversaries, because there was actually a very active Nazi party, it was called the Amerikabund, that existed in the United States all the way up until we got into World War II in 1941. Then they were immediately outlawed. But before that, there was a very significant amount of them here. And I mean, if you don't believe me, pull up the rallies that they'd have at Madison Square Garden in New York City, and there would be tens of thousands of people at those rallies. I mean, it was a fairly significant movement before World War II broke out. But when we say significant, I'm not saying it was like half of the country. It was like 3% or 2% or smaller, but they were still big enough that they were quite well seen. They were very obvious to many people that they existed as a group in America until they were outlawed. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. But I would say that we're definitely not the semi-adversary of the Russians. The Russians are an enemy of the nation. But a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And we've also got an $8 support from Abdullah. And thank you very much, Abdullah, for that support right there. Not sure who that individual is there. I think we've answered that question before, and we've sort of like refrained from answering it. We don't make comments on individual people that we're not aware of, so we'll have to pass. But thank you very much for the $8 support. And we also have a 5 from Matej. He said, "This guys, it's Pahlavi, the crown prince of Iran, son of the last Shah." I mean, it may be, but I mean, he's still like, when we say like, we're talking about this guy, I mean, it's still this guy. I'm not going to call him like, the honorable royal, whatever, like his title is. Like, I'm just referring to the guy as a guy. He is. He's not like God or something. He's just a guy. But Enforcer, what say you?
Yeah, that's the guy. That's it. That's the guy. I mean, we don't call like President Zelensky, President Zelensky. We usually just say, here's the speech from Zelensky or something like that. It's like he's probably the greatest leader of our age right now as far as a national leader, but we don't go His Excellency, His Prime Sublimeness, President Volodymyr Zelensky. It's just, he's Zelensky. The president's the president. I would say his name, but it is what it is. It's just Pahlavi. That's like he is the exiled crown prince of Iran, but he's also just Pahlavi. But a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Suzanne B, who said, "Could this eventually mean that Putin can't get any more drones from Iran?"
Yes, actually, that could mean that, but it wouldn't be that big of a deal as a lot of people would think. We understand that a lot of drone production that the Russians use right now either comes domestically from inside of Russia or from China. So the Iranians don't play as big of a part anymore because most of the drones that the Russians use are actually licensed built as Garan 2s, not the Shahed 136. So for that reason, if Iran went under, we would see that for a little while Russian stockpiles would drop a little bit lower than normal, but it wouldn't be anything significant and ending Russian drone strikes completely. So I hope that does address that the best I can. A big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Plazoth, who puts in a 4. Also, JD, who put in a 2. And Marc-Andre Burnett, who put in a 2 as well. And we appreciate all 3 of you, Plazoth, JD, and Mark, for that support. And thank you very much for helping to keep the channel running yet again. And we also had a 2 from Setai Church, who said the protesters need to take those oil fields. You must be an American.
man, we got to make sure that revolution takes those oil fields. It's like, man.
Oil? Did somebody say oil? I mean, I like a little oil, and there's plenty of people that like oil too, like Diddy. He loved oil too.
We have the greatest of olive oil. Olive oil? Oh, that's not the right oil. Never mind. Oil. But anyways, oh man, I would say actually for a revolution like this right now, what's important for them is to take the major cities, and they'll be in a pretty good chance to succeed once they do that. So with that, I hope that it does address that well. What?
Oh man, honestly, like in the geopolitical world, oil is like crack for the Americans. Like if you see anybody saying anything about oil, I guarantee you the Americans are always involved in it, like every single time. That doesn't always like motivate every single war, but there's always a mention of oil somewhere. Like you'll never see a conflict without oil being mentioned somewhere in the periphery. And once you hear that, I guarantee the United States is lurking around somewhere. Like there's a U.S. person, an ambassador or something, is lurking around. If there's any talk of oil, that bald eagle is screeching, flying in like a fighter bomber, coming in for that oil every time.
Yeah, honestly, man, it's always like that. It's like there's always oil somewhere, and America's got a really good nose for oil. We can sniff that stuff out from thousands of miles away. Like, you know what, folks, they always used to say that the ships of the Navy were guided by the stars in the night, but the reality is that the ships of the U.S. Navy are guided by the smell of that sweet, sweet oil refinery thousands of miles away. We go, weigh anchor and set satellite to wherever the oil fields are, and we end up there quite well. But also oil is actually a very important strategic resource, folks. There actually is a reason why we fight for oil, and that's because a lot of Americans have this very good tendency of complaining about how expensive the price of gas per gallon is. And so to keep that low, or to at least try and keep it low enough that they only complain so much, we go around the whole world basically on this adventure of going to war with basically whoever, where, and whenever where, to make sure that we try and keep the price of gas here a little low for people. So that's basically why we do it.
Also, rare earths. That's a new one too. You got to have your rare earths and your precious metals and things like that. That's another one that we're learning about today, how important that was. I think China kind of had us beat on the precious metals thing. While the United States was looking for oil like really viciously, China was cornering the precious metals market essentially the whole time. So now we're realizing, oh crap, China's got a pretty strong hold on that. So we might want to fix it. And now we're trying to go through the really rapid process of trying to dig ourselves out of that hole.
So you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna handicap him by not giving me oil. Man, you see, folks, that's why it's important for us to have those endless wars in the sandbox, because they give us control over the sandbox oil. So then the Chinese can't get it because we run the show. See, checkmate. Like, they might be able to refine a little rare earth here or there, or rare earth as we put it these days.
Rare earths.
But they ain't going to have no oil. They ain't going to have a drop. And to be entirely honest with y'all, folks, oil is more a basic necessity to economic function than a rare earth would be. Because, how the hell are you supposed to get the rare earths to the refinery if you have no way to move a vehicle to transport the stuff? There you go, checkmate. So with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Martin G-I-N-G, who puts in a 2. He said, Iran regime gives me Hunger Games vibes. So sad. Honestly, the Iran regime gives me terrorist vibes. If you ask me, it's a step above the Hunger Games. They're on the survival games at this point. Just a terrible group of people, that Iranian government. Just awful. Not anybody you'd want to invite over for tea or anything like that. You wouldn't want to do that. Not even Winnie the Pooh would let him have any honey either. They won't even let him have that. They hoard it. But Enforcer, what say you?
And God forbid you ever try and page them. They'll lose their nuts.
They never had him in the first place. That's the crazy thing.
Oh, man. Man, right there, man, the way you just said that is about to make me say, How about macaroni and gravy? Like, I don't know why, but that just reminded me of that whole thing for some
That
reason.
black magic, that sick shit.
That's man, he flings the chair around. Oh my god, man! How much more disrespect can I take? But anyways, beyond that though, I mean, dude, that guy almost turned into Rodney Dangerfield a couple of times in that show, man. Like, but anyways, moving on from that though, I do have to say a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. But I'd say that the Iranians give me terrorist vibes as well. They really aren't Hunger Games, folks. They are very brutal and violent people. For some
Iranian government,
reason,
that is.
yeah, the Iranian government. Well, you know, obviously the people in the government, but
Just making sure. Just making sure.
well, I mean, hell, honestly, the rebels are quite angry and violent people as well right now. I mean, it takes a little bit of anger and violence to get a revolution
Freedom
going.
fighters, man. Freedom fighters. That's all they are. Is merely freedom fighters.
No, we do not say freedom fighters, man. The LRA gave a bad name to freedom fighters a long time ago. We call them rebels. Because, you know,
I call them liberators.
Well, I call them rebels, man, because who in the world do people root for in the Star Wars movies? The Empire or the rebels? The rebels. That's the good guys. The rebels.
I call them agents of loveliness.
Aid sense of loveliness.
No. What the?
That's what you
Agents
said.
of loveliness.
Hold on, man. I can play that back. It sounded like agents of loveliness. I was like, huh? I was like, what? Dude, listen to it. Rebels.
I call them agents of loveliness.
I said it right.
Bro, you said
you're
agents
deaf.
of loveliness. Bro, I was like, yo, what?
Man, your ears aren't working right or something like that. I said it clearly. I said agents of loveliness. I said freedom fighters. I said democracy defenders. I don't know about that yet. Well, the time will tell because, you know, you got to be careful saying that. Sometimes it doesn't go that way. Sometimes the rebels take things over and then all of a sudden the rebels get pushed aside and a terrorist regime comes into place. You got to watch out. But until that happens, though, we'll have to wait and see.
Man, we will have to wait and see right there. That's for sure. But with that, I hope that does address that well, at least the best we can. But I would say they are a step above the Hunger Games, folks. But a big thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep it running. I also saw MJ Panahi say, great analysis of democracies. Like, that's, like, a lot of people never put that into the equation, but you have to have a cultural base or a knowledge base culturally to work with to build a democracy off of it. That's why, just to be entirely honest with y'all, a democracy will never work in Russia. Like, that's just, like, it's just a fact.
But they are a democracy.
No, like, no, man, they're as much a democracy as the Supreme Soviet was a democracy. Like, they're not a democracy. Like a whole bunch of countries, folks, are democracies in name, but what they really are dictatorships, where a single guy basically runs the country with a small inner circle, which is a normal authoritarian dictatorship. And that's why a democracy will never work in Russia. A democracy would be pretty damn hard pressed to work in China because they got so close. They got so close, folks, in the late 2000s because they actually had a guy peacefully transfer power, and then it immediately went right back into a dictatorship, so clearly won't work there. South Korea actually has a pretty rough time with democracy as well, although they do have one, and it does function. They have a pretty rough time with it, because if y'all thought that the last guy who tried to overthrow the government was something, they had dictators that were in charge of South Korea all the way up until about the mid-80s, and then since then, basically every single president of South Korea has been put on charges of corruption, embezzlement, or something else along the lines, and basically all of them have ended up living the rest of their lives in a Korean prison somewhere. Japan also has some issues with democracy as well, but generally their issues with democracy are very American issues, just basic corruption and such things, so, you know, that's, you know, par for the course. Japan does, like, and, you know, it
Just
always...
some basic corruption, that's all they got going on. There's a little corruption, there's a little bit of, you know, some misappropriating going on, possibly, allegedly.
Well, not allegedly. There was this one guy, dude, who every single Saturday, I think it was, on his records keeping, he would take a train to, like, Maizuru or something from Kobe. It was somewhere around there. I forgot the exact area that this guy was in and where the train trip was, but he never rode that train. He never got the tickets. He would just fill that out every single weekend on a Saturday to get free reimbursement from the Japanese government. I think he, like, if I remember correctly, because he's in prison right now, he scammed the Japanese government out of like hundreds of thousands of US dollars with these fake train tickets. And then they finally found out about it one day. And then his response, dude, was, Japan's not having enough children. And he did that in a press conference. And everyone was like, what? No, what does it have to do with this guy robbing us for the train tickets that he never bought? It was the craziest thing. But they also have a whole bunch
What was
of
he trying to go see? Like, what was he trying to go do? See some women or something?
No, he wasn't doing anything. He was literally just getting the money so that he could fill his pockets with reimbursements for tickets he never bought.
So why was he talking about the children then? What was he going on the train to go do?
Nothing. Dude, he wasn't on the train. That's the thing. He never took the train ever.
Oh, damn.
Like, he was just pocketing the money. So then when everyone asked him about it, he just he did almost like what a U.S. politician would do, but he did it badly, which was to completely sidetrack into a whole other topic, which was the declining fertility rate in Japan, and then cry about that at the press conference, which never addressed the allegations of corruption that were brought up against him. And then he was found guilty for it as well by a Japanese court and then put in prison. So, it's like the typical... Well, that's kind of like abnormal corruption. That's like bizarro, like Looney Tunes style corruption going on there. But they have stuff like that happens in Japan. It's just normal corruption as usual.
That's not quite like America, though, because if it was America, the man would get a pardon.
Well, you never know.
Here, have a pardon.
But if it was America, folks, what they'd be saying is, I heard that the Congress is about to be making a vote on a certain bill that's going to rise or drop a certain stock. I had to make a future on it. It's like, but
make a future,
some futures, or maybe put some money in those stocks before they go up through the roof. Yeah.
Some call options on those B.
I'm sorry. I don't know the terms, man. I don't deal with stocks. I don't put a lot of stock in them. Get it? But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
And with that, we are now jumping into one more super chat, which goes to Joppy once again. He said China's biggest weakness is fertilizer, and is the easiest way to keep them stuck at negotiating tables.
That's an interesting idea right there, and we'll have to put that into consideration. And I thank you for supporting and sharing that with us. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And as Brian Blairstown put it, he said, you can put some puts and you can put some calls. You can make some calls and you can put some puts. That's generally the gist of it right there, pretty much. They should totally outlaw that, by the way. I'm not sure who the hell would object to outlawing, trading stocks for people that have knowledge that other people don't have access to. Seems only logical that we don't allow them to trade stocks, especially as elected representatives. But honestly, I'll be honest with you, folks. I've never heard anybody object to banning stock trading for Congress people and senators. I've never heard anybody object to it except for the senators and Congress people themselves, which seems like a conflict of interest.
Yeah, I feel like that ought to be brought up to the Supreme Court or something like that. But then again, there's no law in the book to say that what anyone could be doing with that is unconstitutional. So then it's kind of, hands are tied there as well. So yeah, how, well. But anyways, we actually have one more super chat. What do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to Sephiroth, who puts in a 5 and said, I was randomly reminiscing. Remember when Bush dodged those shoes like Neo from the Matrix? Random thoughts are indeed random. I get recommended that every single month, like on the dot, every single month. I get recommended this video of Bush masterfully dodging those 2 shoes that crazy man threw at him right there, and he just it was wild. Bush did it with such grace. It was like he was ready for it. I don't even know how he did it. It's wild. He didn't get struck by either shoe. He got both shoes flung at him. He dodged both.
I wish, folks, I could get y'all a picture of him when he was coming up from the first shoe and he was about to have the second one thrown at him. He thought it was pretty funny, too. He was about to bust out laughing at the guy in the middle of dodging these shoes like a legend. What's crazy, folks, is that apparently every foreign leader who ever dealt with Bush, the public has a opinion of Bush, he was kind of just this goofy country dude. But apparently everyone who dealt with him, even Putin, was that's a guy to be respected because of the fear about the guy. Because apparently he was very very cutthroat apparently in foreign policy, so that was very interesting here. I actually wouldn't have believed that if they hadn't said it directly. But
those Bushes, they've been around for a minute for a reason.
Daddy Bush was sitting there saying, you got to mess with their shit, because he was a CIA director for a little bit, and the little Bush right here is all right, Pops, let me show you how it's done. But let's see. That picture right there kind of shows him laughing like that one does. But, Yeah, that was one
He
hell of
handled
an
it
incident.
well, honestly. Like he was just like he acted like it was just a normal thing. Like the way he reacted to it, he's just like, huh, looks like he had a little outburst there. It's like that goofy like stuff that he would always do, the Bushisms. He was basically doing a Bushism in the middle of getting assaulted.
Man, honestly, man, classic. Like, it was classic early 2000s stuff right here. And also, the interesting fact for y'all: the reason why the guy threw his shoes at Bush is that in Middle Eastern cultures, showing the bottom of your shoe is a great offense. So that's why he specifically threw the shoe bottom first at him, so that way he could see the bottom of it, and hopefully the bottom of the shoe would hit him in the face, and it didn't. But also the Secret Service was apparently back there going, "Oh, he dodged another! Oh!" Like it was a sports game or something, because it took them like 30 seconds to come running out of the back into the middle of the press room. But anyways, with that, we are
Also, by the way, speaking of disrespect, if you're ever in the Middle East, I noticed this. I think I noticed this in a video yesterday. I can't remember which one it was, but if you're in the Middle East and someone comes up to shake your hand and they put out their left hand and shake you with their left hand, that's a sign of bad disrespect. Like right there, by the way, like that's some serious disrespect. In Middle Eastern culture, like in countries in the Middle East, the left hand is usually considered unclean, if you know what I mean. It's used for hygienic reasons, if you get my drift there. So if you shake with the left, which is used for that purpose, you're basically wiping shit on somebody, essentially. That's the idea behind it. So yeah, it's like the ultimate form of disrespect. Also, pointing with an index finger, also very rude too. So there's certain things like the shoes, the bottom of shoes, you don't ever show bottoms of shoes. That's bad. You don't use the left hand and you don't point. If you see any of those right there, somebody's going out of their way to try to mess with you.
Man, honestly, man, that's true stuff, folks. Remember to remind yourself of that if you ever go to a Middle Eastern country, and there are several that you can go to: Kuwait, Jordan, the UAE, Qatar, Oman, Bahrain, and Saudi Arabia. Those are basically like the safe countries to go to. Iraq, no go, don't go there. Syria, obviously not, and Yemen, clearly not. Israel is fine to go to as well, but I'm speaking of like, Middle Eastern countries. When people think of the Middle East, they don't really think of Israel being in that group, but Israel's a fine place to go as well. But with that, it's time for us to move on to the next one.
And we have one more super chat, which goes to Jack, ALN, who put in a 20. And thank you very much, Jack, for that support. He said, in America, it's not called corruption, it's called merely lobbying.
Oh, that cute little lobbying. But that money is never touched by the candidates or never touched by the, Congress people, the presidents and whatnot. That is just money to help them finance their campaign and help them to win. But then once they win, they have to return the favor, or else these people might put their money elsewhere and possibly start running slander campaigns against that other guy that they supported the last term.
That's called primarying.
Of course. But that honestly is something, folks, that I think ought to not be a thing. Like, funds ought to be raised directly through the citizenry. Lobbying is absolutely ridiculous, because you got these singular companies or these singular people who throw in millions of dollars to run ad campaigns to get people on board with something or not, whether it's in their interest or not, which I think is undue influence on the election. Like, in my opinion, I would call that undue influence on an election. But what's the absolute bizarre thing about it is that is basically the way the system's run since its inception almost. So really, really bizarre with that. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. And a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Jack. And with that, it's time for us to move on into the Morse code decoders. Huh?
Also, by the way, I saw Agent Maya or Agent Mia in the chat said, thumbs up is rude in Iran. It means up yours. Honestly, like that's one of my favorites, like little hand gestures right there. Not quite as extreme as Malai down there in South America. He does it way too extreme. He's like gritting his teeth and like acting crazy while he's doing it. But I'm just like a casual little thumbs up or something like that. Honestly, I'd be offending everybody because I always do a little thumbs up for everything. Whenever I like am saying like trying to acknowledge somebody or something, I might give them a thumbs up or something like that. So apparently in Iran, it'd be like up yours, you jackass. It's like damn, it's like that's bad, honestly. Like there's too many offensive symbols. Like could they cut down the amount of offensive symbols they're talking about?
I mean, honestly, yeah, it's like is every hand signal offensive? I don't know. Heavens be though, I would get in a lot of trouble in the Middle East. I mean, I do a thumbs up everywhere. I would I would be pissing people off left and right. But anyways, with that, a big thanks to you for the support once again, Jack, and helping the channel to keep it running. And thank you to those folks in the chat. Not that folk, that would be a singular person, but the folks in the chat who told us all the interesting things about what's rude and what's not in the Middle East. This is Middle Eastern etiquette class. But anyways, with that, we are on to the Morse code decoders and the live chats. Due to time constraints, though, we will only be able to get 3 live chat questions, and then we'll be rounding out the stream for the night. So what do we got, Matthew?
So we had Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Mason Miami, Joni Dog, Norm Pritchett, Arab Garbo, Heroic Fluffiness, Kush, Kobe Tarek, Siren, Brian Blairstown. They said, Demore says, Iran is getting worse with each passing day. And I think they're going on the down and the out, and LLT LSA.
And that is the sound of money. And y'all got that dead on the nail. That is the Morse code message of the night. I got to congratulate y'all greatly for getting that Morse code message correct. It's truly profound and incredible to know that many of y'all continue to get that correct time and time again. I got to give a huge shout out to the Lee Springer Arsenal Corps, because if it wasn't for y'all, we wouldn't be able to know what that Morse code message says every night. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And we're on to the third to last question of the night.
All right, so jumping on to that third to last, or into that last question of the night, third to last, whatever, I'm butchering everything. But this one goes to Trezzy, who said, the Iran situation stinks of CIA and Mossad. I can smell it. What do you guys think?
Maybe. I mean, like, resentment against the Iranian government isn't completely, like, outlandish. Like, it would be something to say, like, if a public was happy with their government and then a revolution like this was being conducted and it basically came out of nowhere, that would look really suspicious. I would say that these people probably are just fed up with it, and it really didn't take any CIA or Mossad involvement, and now that it's happening, I'm sure the CIA and Mossad will get involved, but I don't really think this had its upbringing, like, its roots in, like, a CIA or a Mossad operation. I think it's truly just the Iranian public might actually hate the government. Which, if I lived under a government like the Iranian government, I would absolutely hate a government like that. I can tell you that up front, and I know that they probably hate it as well, like I would. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And honestly, I'd have to be with the chat. I see people saying, well, it doesn't really stink. It's like a sweet aroma. I would have to say, I don't think the Iran situation stinks. It smells of a nice, fine cologne to me. It smells very good. It smells like, let's see here, what's good cologne? It smells like sauvage. That's what it smells like. It smells like some nice sauvage. And they're getting real sauvage on that Iranian government, I'll tell you what. But anyways, jumping into our next one here, our next live chat, this one goes to none other than AF Kaplan, who said, with threats from Russia over the pursuit of this tanker by the United States, will the current administration keep trying to negotiate with Putin on Ukraine?
I think they might try, because at this point with the president of the United States, the Russians could run him into a brick wall head first 20 times in negotiations. He'll just come back and do it again. That's what they've done all year. So I think that's what's going to happen, is that, they've once again basically run him into another brick wall head first in negotiating, and then he'll go, let's do it again. And then we'll just, be doing it again at the very beginning point of this year and acting like that didn't happen. And I have a feeling that what's going on with the ship down there in the Atlantic probably will have really no impact on this whole larger situation with Ukraine in Europe. So I hope that does address it the best I can. And also a big shout out and a thanks to Darren Quinn, who threw in a $20 super chat with no comment. We greatly appreciate you for the support, and we thank you greatly for helping this channel to keep on running and making this thing possible. And we also have another
Crispy.
one. Oh,
Crispy just threw in a 20 right now, right after Darren. And thank you very much, Darren, for that 20, by the way. And a huge shout out to Crispy for throwing in that 20 as well. That's a crispy 20 right there. I must say, very, very nice. And we appreciate the both of you very much.
and that is a crisp $20 bill. And I gotta thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep rolling, Crispy. A huge thanks to you. And so with that, I hope that does address the Baltichus while Darren Quinn and Crispy channel legends and old guards at that. And with that, it's time for us to move on and into the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is going to be none other than Dale Alaticus. And he said, I had also heard that some of the rebels wait a minute, hold on. I just lost it. Hold on a second. Sorry about that, Dale. He said, I also had heard that some of the local police had joined the rebels. And is it true?
We haven't been able to confirm that on our end on the show. It appears that we haven't seen that yet. It's not out of the question, though. It's just that we may have not been able to document that yet. But from what our evidence and information shows, at the moment, we cannot confirm that. I'm not going to say it's wrong, though. I'm just going to say if that has happened, we haven't been able to see that in raw picture and video evidence. So for that reason, we can't confirm it. So I hope that does address that the best we can, at least with the information we have at the moment. And with that, folks...
We got one more super chat. Wait a second.
Oh.
We got one more super chat right here. This one goes to Adam McLean, another longtime channel viewer, by the way. He said, "May Utah live up to all of my expectations for you." And it has, Adam. Thankfully, it has. Honestly, I love Utah. It's nice out here. Wide open spaces, great big mountains, no snow, which is weird because it's not January 1st and we haven't had any proper snow. But it lives up to my expectations. I like it out here. I like it. But Enforcer, what say you?
Utah is a great place, an amazing place, and it's lived up to my expectations, which were actually somewhat low, and has very much well exceeded them, like way beyond what I was expecting. I was expecting Salt Lake City to be like a minor upgrade from Birmingham. That's what I was thinking it was going to be, and I was not, like, I was literally expecting really, folks, the only thing I was expecting that would be different in Salt Lake City is that it would lack the shit diffuser smell that was always happening where we lived. I gotta explain that to y'all because a lot of people are gonna be like, what do you mean by shit diffuser? Where we lived in Birmingham, the sewer system had been built incorrectly, and so there was usually there was an issue to where methane gas would build up inside of the pipes to incredibly high pressures to the point that there was a risk that the pipes could rupture or break from the pressure inside of them. So what they did is that they did this really cheap workaround to where they just drilled down to the pipes and connected them to literal shit diffusers. So these things had safety valves built onto them to where if the methane gas pressure in the pipes got too high, the safety valve would activate and it would literally just start to diffuse the shit smell into the open air. And the entire place that we lived in, it smelled like raw shit. So really that was the only thing I was looking to get out of when we moved out of here. I was like, as long as that isn't the case, I'll be totally fine. And we moved out here, and it wasn't just the lack of the smell of shit, it was also everything else. So I was really like, yeah, I was like, Salt Lake City, I'm loving it out here. But yeah, that was rough. I could actually show y'all one of them. Matthew, do you think we could show one of them really quickly to show y'all what those things looked like?
I mean, you could. I'm not sure how many people want to see that, but I mean, you could.
Yeah, we won't show it. It's just a little like black oil drum thing on the side of the road with like a little pipe sticking out the top of it. It's nothing really crazy looking, but those were everywhere, and it would freaking reek like terribly. It was awful. And you know, and that's why and also on top of that, the roads were hardly maintained, and if it didn't smell like that, then it just reeked of the worst weed imaginable. You know, so basically,
I remember driving down the 280. I don't know if the sewer system was broke, but I don't know if it was the way they designed it intentionally or what. But I remember you would drive down Highway 280 like in Hoover going toward downtown Birmingham, and I would have my windows down because I like to drive with my windows down personally, get some air. I don't like the air conditioner if I can try to get real air outside. So I would drive down the road, and all of a sudden it would hit you like a wall. Like you would just be like, oh my God. You'd just be like, you'd have to roll the windows up, turn on the manual like recirculator and all that stuff. It would be horrific. You'd be thinking, whoa, that is like the worst possible smell that you could ever smell. And it would be down a huge stretch of the highway. Like you just smell it the whole way down. And you could literally see reactions on other people's faces. You could see other people in cars the moment that wall of crap smell hit them, the face just went numb and the windows went up like instantly. It was bad.
So this is the thing, by the way, folks. This is it. This is the little oil drum looking tank. You can see the pipe that connects straight down into the sewer access right there that they literally just drilled right through the concrete pad. And up there is the safety valve on top of it. So whenever the methane gas would get strong enough in pressure inside the pipe, that valve would activate and it would just start diffusing shit smell into the air because it's literally methane gas from literal feces in the sewer. So it was absolutely horrendous. So we would go down the road at night on our midnight food runs, folks, in the car, and we would be like, roll the windows. Or we just eventually just give up on rolling out the windows. Be like, oh my god, it smells like shit. Oh, now it smells like bad weed. Oh, now it smells like a totally different flavor of shit. Oh my god. And then we finally make it to like Taco Bell or something, and then we would drive back, and then you would just get the whole myriad of different smells, all of them horrendous and headache-inducing and vomit-inducing on the way back home. And that was literally what it was like every single day there. So y'all can kind of get an idea just from the smells alone why we started to resent the place. Because honestly, like, being completely upfront with y'all, Alabama isn't too bad as long as you avoid like downtown Birmingham, downtown Montgomery, Selma, Tuskegee, and Mobile. As long as you avoid like all of the major cities in the state of Alabama, it's kind of okay. But the thing that made me absolutely start to hate the place is that I would say the majority of people in Birmingham were incredibly angry. Like, they were miserable and angry. I'd say it was like 70% of them. It always smelled like shit or weed. And also the roads in most places weren't really maintained too well at all. And also road rage was literally a daily occurrence no matter how good or bad you drove. Which also, like, once again, part of the anger thing. So, like, beyond that though, like, I gotta say though, like, I had personally a good deal of friends in Birmingham. I generally had things that I went and did, like, I went to the rail yard or I went shooting, but I kind of stopped doing that over the past year, just because I really haven't had the time. But beyond that, I had stuff to do, had friends there. It wasn't all bad, but, like, just the quality of life thing of going outside and smelling literal sewage every day got exhausting very quickly. That was one of them, but they're literally all the way up and down Highway 280. And also, that's the only road into town and out. So if you wanted to get into downtown Birmingham, you had to get on that road with hundreds of thousands of other people, and it take an entire hour and a half to go 9 miles down the road into Birmingham.
It was a bad road. But also in the meantime, though, a big shout out to Goose, who put in a $2 support and said state of Alabama versus Utah military style.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And of course, we thank you greatly for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, folks, now that y'all have seen one of the crap diffusers, it's time for us to round this thing on out for the night. So with that, folks, I thank you all so much for watching. And I thank everyone for supporting this channel tonight as well and helping it to keep on running. We had a peak viewership tonight of about 17,000 people. It was 16.9 technically. And we had a total viewership of 148,000 people. We're entirely honored and greatly appreciative to know that so many of y'all continue to choose the Enforcer channel to be your primary source of news, and we hope to see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of news from around the world. If there is enough news to make a short war video in the middle of the day, which there may be, Enforcer Matt will be the one making that short war video. So with that, we will see you all then. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe. Slava Ukraini, Ram Slava, long live the Lee Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, thank you all to 150,000 plus people that have joined us by the end of the stream. That is casually just about half of the entire mainstream's daily viewership right there on one YouTube stream right there. So we appreciate every single one of you for choosing us as your news source. And once again, we will see you tomorrow on that short war video midday if there is enough news to cover, and definitely at 10 p.m. Eastern to cover the rest of the news throughout the day on the nightly war news stream. But with that, thank you all for joining us, and of course, Slava Ukraine, Hero Slava, get some rest, and good night.
On his